Hey guys, and welcome to Grandma's Sweets project. And in this project, we're going to use HTML5, CSS3, Bootstrap 4, and a little bit of JavaScript to help out the grandma. Now, it could be our grandma, it could be any kind of grandma. Basically, she has a sweet store, and we just need to create a project where we're going to be showing what can she do in a sweet store. So we're going to start first with a navbar, where as you can see, we're going to have a logo. Then here we're going to have links, some phone, and this is going to be where we're going to be getting our cart. So once we're going to click it, we're going to have our cart showing and disappearing. And then notice in the cart, we're just going to have some items over here. And obviously there's going to be a button for clearing and also for a checkout. Now the project is going to be responsive. So I'm not going to show for each and every section. However, if we're going to go to a smaller or bigger screen, then everything is going to be responsive and the column width is also going to change. So once we're done with a navbar, this is going to be a header section. We're going to have a title and again a button. And after that, we're going to have the about section with just some title and text. And over here on the right hand side, there's going to be an image. Now, as I'm hovering over the image, notice what happens. So we'll have our outline that's pretty much going to be changing the space where it's at. So as we're hovering, the outline is going to be moving. Like I said, the project is going to be responsive. So once we're going to go to a smaller screen, notice that we have a 1 column layout instead of 2. Now, the moment we're going to reach the medium size, then we're going to go to 2 column layout. Then we're going to have the store section. We're going to have just a buttons for the items that we're going to have, and also the search bar where we can search for items, and then these are going to be the items. So as I'm hovering each and every item, there's going to be some box shadow in the bottom, and then notice how the cart also appears as I'm hovering over the item, and then in the bottom we're just going to have the name and the price of the item. And like I said before, the project is going to be responsive. So once we get to a bigger screen, there's going to be a 3 column layout. After the store section, there's going to be a services section where the grandma explains that she cooks the bread, makes the cupcakes, and provides the candy. Now, obviously, this is going to be just some dummy text, but imagine that we're going to be placing some kind of text in there. Now, this section is going to have a parallax effect, the same as the banner. Notice as I'm scrolling, then the image stays fixed on the back and the text is actually moving up and down. So the same thing is going to be over here. We're going to have all the texts and all the icons, and it is going to be on the foreground, and then in the background the image is going to stay there. Now also both of the images from the top and for this section are going to have the linear gradient. So basically this is going to be this dark overlay, and here this is going to be this yellow overlay. So this is how we're going to achieve this look. Then after that, we're going to have order cake section, where we're going to have 3 basically styles of cakes. Grandma makes, I don't know, birthday, custom, and a wedding cake. And obviously, again, we're going to have the prices over here, some explanation about each and every cake. And last but not least, we're going to have our footer, where we're going to have some social media icons. And then this would be the address for the grandma store. And like I said before, we're going to have our cart, whereas we're clicking, the cart is showing and then disappearing. And then within the cart, we're just going to have an item. Now each item is going to have a little trash can where we can actually delete the icon. And like I said before, there's going to be total and clear cart and checkout buttons. Now this is going to be the project. I hope you guys enjoying the project, and let's start working on it. If you want to follow along the project, you're going to need to get a setup folder. Now the setup folder is going to be on my GitHub. So you can either go ahead and search in my GitHub, or I'm going to leave it in the description, the actual link to a setup folder. But basically the name is going to be boot, and then we're going to have dash sweet setup. So this is going to be the folder that you need to download or clone, and then you're going to be able to follow along with a project. Now, just letting you know that this project is part of my Bootstrap course. And as of now, the course has more than 30 hours of content. And I'm going to leave it in the description the coupon, which always gets you the price of $10. So now that you're ready and you have all your setup folders, now let's go ahead and let's start working on the project. Our first order of business is to get up a setup folder, because that's pretty much going to be start of our project. Now, once we have that, and in my case, I'm going to have it in desktop. Now, obviously you can have the folder anywhere you would like, but for me, in order to film everything, I just like the fact that I have a clean desktop and then I have a folder of what I'm working on. So once we have the folder, I'm going to be using the Visual Studio Code as my text editor. And if you are right now in between text editors, or if you're looking for a new text editor, I would strongly suggest to give the Visual Studio Code a try, because in my experience, it is the best code editor right now out there. So again, you can just go to visualstudio.code and just download the text editor. So once we'll have the text editor ready, and all I'm doing is over here is I'm just drag and dropping the folder, the setup folder, and this is what I have right now in my text editor. Now, one of the extensions that I'm going to be using a lot in the Visual Studio Code, and if you want, just open up the extensions, you need to click over here, the lowest rectangle over here, and then let me zoom in. And the extension that I'm going to be using the most in this tutorial, in this project, is going to be Live Server. And basically what Live Server does, it just opens up the project in a live server. So as we're working, every time we save, we pretty much see right away our changes. So what I'm going to do over here, I'm just going to say new window, and the actual key path would be Command L and O. And now what's happening is we're starting the live server. Now, obviously, we're not going to have anything right now in the folder, meaning any meaningful HTML. So basically, this is all going to be set up. So we have our title, which would be Grandma's project. And then here are going to be some comments for the icons that we're going to be using. Now, the icons itself already are in the image folder. However, the site where we're going to be getting the icons, and I'm going to show you this throughout this video, the setup video. Basically, the site that we're going to be using, they require that you attribute the actual icon. So this is what we're going to be using for a comment. Now let me go back to an actual folder and let me just show you the setup. So in the CSS, we're going to have for the font awesome. Then we're going to have some CSS for the Bootstrap and the actual CSS where we're going to be working. Then, like I said, these are going to be all the images. And here we're going to have the folder, which is going to be just for the cart. So remember in the intro video, I showed you the cart where we're going to be placing the items. So basically these images are smaller. They're like 50 by 50. So instead of just taking the big image and then squeezing it down, I just made it right away smaller. So this would be a separate folder. Now, obviously, we're going to have our index.html. And then again, this is going to be JavaScript. Now, for the JavaScript, there's going to be only one piece of code, and we already have it in a setup folder. So basically, I'm just going to go over the code, but we're not going to go into details what we're doing. Now, the web fonts is going to be for the font awesome, for the icons. And then here we're using the Bootstrap bundle min.js, which again, we're going to need for the Bootstrap to work, and the jQuery. Now, I'm going to go over these things of what we're downloading and why we're downloading. However, I'm not going to spend too much time on that because you already have everything in a folder. So there's plenty of videos that show how to download something or how to acquire something. So I'm just going to go in very, very brief detail. Now let's go back to a text editor. And before we touch on what we're downloading, let me just go to Styles CSS and let me show you what we have so far. So first of all, you notice that we have imported the fonts. And again, we're going to go over how we're doing that. But basically, these are going to be the fonts that we're using. I mean, I don't want to spell it right now, but anyway, so these are going to be the fonts that we're going to be using. And here we're going to be using the custom properties. Now, at the end of the video, I'm going to show you two things at the end of the project. I'm going to show you how to deploy the site on an Netlify, and I'm also going to show you how we can transfer these custom properties that we're working on, because this is actually just CSS. Now, the issue is that some browsers might not support it. So maybe at the end of the actual video, you just want to transfer to regular CSS. Now, the reason why I'm using this actual custom properties is the fact that we're going to be using a lot of colors, and I don't want to go through each and every element and be like, okay, so now we need to write hashtag EF7998. So basically what I would want is I would just want to tell you, you know what, we're going to use the main pink or main white and main black. And basically the syntax is going to be 2 dashes, then this is going to be the name, and then whatever we're using for this property. And the way we use it, we just write var, and then we write what would be the actual custom property that we're getting on. So it's a lot of similar like JavaScript in a sense because we're using this variable, but basically this allows me to skip the fact of reusing these colors, and instead I can just say main black, main white. But again, at the end of the video, what we're going to do is we're going to transfer this back to regular CSS. So let's say that you are complaining that some of the browsers might not support this. We're just going to transfer this back to regular CSS. Now we're also going to transfer back all the prefixes because as we're going to be working with a CSS3 properties. Now some of them require prefixes. However, I don't like to do this by hand. I don't see the point of adding a prefix for each and every property. What we're going to do is we're just going to use my setup for workflow that I just made. I mean, I'm not using that really for my workflow, but I have it as just a very, very minimal where it transfers back the custom properties and also it transfers back the actual auto prefixes. So this is what we're going to do at the end of the video. But throughout the project, we're going to be working with these custom properties and we're going to be working without any auto prefixes. So this would be the HTML. Like I showed you, the index HTML, we're going to have our comments, but there's nothing else over here. And obviously here we'll just have the links. We have the links to a font awesome. We have the links to a style CSS where we're going to be writing our styles. Then we'll have our Bootstrap, and then all the way in the bottom we'll have jQuery, Bootstrap, again, what we need, and the app.js. Now, like I said, in the app.js, we already have our piece of code. So unless you write wrong the class names, by the time we're done with HTML and CSS, everything should be working. Now, obviously, we're going to test it at the end, but I'm just going to show you that by the time we're going to be done with HTML and CSS, your cart should be working as long as your class names are exactly the same. Because this is, I'm not going to go over in too much detail what we're doing over here in the JavaScript. That was the reason why I put it in here, so we don't need to deal with this later on. So basically, this would be the setup from the perspective of our coding. So now let's go over of what things we would need to download if you would want to do it yourself, right? So obviously this is ready for you to go, but just in case, let's quickly cover how we would download everything ourselves. So first things first, we would need a Bootstrap. So we bravely just type Bootstrap, and then we have an option of downloading. Now we have an option of, let's say that we have right away a compiled CSS and JS, and then notice that it says over here, the CSS files comparison. And basically, once we download the folder, it tells us what we would need to include. And notice that for the Bootstrap min CSS, this would include all the CSS that we're going to need. And then for the JavaScript, we would need the Bootstrap bundle min. And also notice that we don't have a jQuery. So basically, this is what I showed you before where I said, so this would be a CSS file for the Bootstrap, and this would be a JavaScript file, which is in JavaScript folder in our setup folder. That is required for the Bootstrap, and it is in the JavaScript folder. Now, you notice that jQuery is not included. So what we need to do is, after we have the Bootstrap, we're going to go to jQuery, and we're going to go and we're going to download the jQuery. Now, once we open up the jQuery, we have an option of download, and it's actually very simple where we have download compressed. So we can just right click it, and we have an option of saving the link. So the moment you save actually link, notice that we're going to have jQuery 3.3 min.js, and only thing that I'm doing is I'm basically saving in this folder. So this is how we can include again jQuery. But obviously I'm including the jQuery in a JavaScript folder, but we can place it pretty much anywhere we would want. So this would be Bootstrap with a jQuery. Then we'll need a Google Fonts. And again, like I showed you, we already download the fonts. But once we're going to go to Google Fonts, we have an option over here of including. So we're just going to click over here for including the font. And then once we open up, we have an option of customizing. So let's say that you would want to add some more styles over here. But if you don't want, we can just go to embedding. And then again, we have a few options. We have the linking, or we can do the importing. Now we're doing the importing. So again, this is already done for us. But this is basically the way for us to get a Google Fonts. Then after that, we're going to have our icon finder. We're going to be getting our icons. Now we're going to be using a few of them. And the reason for that, again, is because they require attribution. And this is why we have those comments in the actual HTML. And you just need to check some of the icons you can actually use without attribution for commercial purposes. And some of them you for sure need to add for commercial purposes the attribution. So you just need to be careful. And you know what? Now that we just covered the icon finder, I just remembered that we also need Font Awesome. So in our case, we can do very simple. I downloaded the Font Awesome, but if you want the Font Awesome, the easiest way is basically we can just do how to use, and they just basically provide the CDN. So the only thing you need to do is just copy and paste this link and place it in the header over here. So let's say if I would have a link, then notice this is going to be my link to the actual file that I download for the Font Awesome. But if you want a CDN, the only thing is you just need to copy and paste the this line. And this is how you can get the Font Awesome. Now after that, we're gonna talk about pictures. Now I got my pictures from the pexels.com because I really like the site, a lot of images, and I mean, I can go on and on. So basically, very good place to get your images for free. Yeah, you don't need to do attribution or anything like that. So this would be pexels.com. Now, for some reason, I opened it twice, so let me get rid of this. And then the third one is going to be coolers, or I don't know why I'm saying third one. The last one is going to be coolers, where we're getting our colors. So basically, we got coolers.co, and we can start the generator where basically we're pressing the tab and getting all the colors that you want. And again, if you don't like my colors, it is very easy. Even at the end of the project, you can just go back and change them. That's the whole reason for these custom properties, because even though we're using this main pink, I can place whatever color I would want over here. So if you're not happy with these color choices, you can go to coolers.co, get whatever colors you would want. Either you have different variable names or you just change whatever values we have over here. It's really up to you. So this would be a setup. Enough of me yapping, and let's actually start coding and working on the Grandma's project. Now that we have gone through our setup, we can start working on the project. And the first thing that we're going to be building is going to be the navbar. Now the navbar is going to have the icon, which would be the logo of our company or the Grandma Suites. Then here's going to be links. Then here we're going to have the phone icon with a phone. Now, obviously, this is not an actual phone. And here, this would be a button. And if we're going to click the button, then the cart is going to pop out. Now, we're not going to be building the cart. In fact, we're going to leave the cart for the very, very last. But we will going to build this button over here with an icon and with some text. And this would be the value of what holds in our cart. So let's go ahead to our index.html and let's start working on it. Now, the first thing we would want to create is going to be the element of header. And we can right away go ahead and within the header get an ID and also say that this is going to be the header ID. Now, after we have created the header element, now let's place a nav. And for the nav, right away need to add few classes. Now, this is going to be the Bootstrap classes. So here we're going to have a navbar. Then we're going to have another class of navbar expand. And here we need to specifically say what screen we would want the navbar to collapse. So basically, if we're going to say large, medium, or small, that means at what screen size we're going to have our links disappearing and when our little burger icon is going to show up. So let me make this smaller. And you notice as I'm making the screen smaller, now I see what I have. Now I literally have my icon where I have my links right now appearing. And basically, as I go to a bigger screen, Now you notice that the burger icon disappears, and now I have all my links. So basically, this is what we're doing with the class. We're saying at what screen size we're going to flip from the links to a burger icon. And here I'm just going to say large. So the moment I'm going to reach the large screen size, this is where my links are going to pop up. And then if I'm going to go less than large, then this is where the burger icon is going to appear. So this is the reason for the class. And last but not least, with the navbar, we're going to have a padding X4. That means that there's going to be a padding of left and right at a navbar. So this is what this PX means. So once we press the tab and just start rolling with our emmet, now notice now this is going to be my navbar. Now, first thing in the navbar, like I said, we're going to be using a logo, and we're going to be using the icon for the logo. So what I would want to do right now is I would just want to grab the first comment that we had over here, and we can just cut it out and copy and paste it over here. And again, the reason for that is because we're going to be placing this within a link. Now this is going to be the link. Now this link is going to have an href. However, we're just going to say that there's going to be a hashtag within this href. It's really not going to go anywhere. However, what we are going to do is we're going to add the class. Now the class is going to be navbar brand. And again, this is going to be a Bootstrap class. And then within this link, let's place our image. So let's do image. Now for the source, we need to look in the image folder, and then we need to look for logo SVG. So this is what we have so far. And over here, alternative, we can just write that this is going to be a, I don't know, main icon or something like this, main icon. So this would be for the link. Now, once we're done with the link, after that, we would want to work with a button. And the button is going to be this toggler button. So notice if I make the screen size smaller, this is going to be my toggler button. Now we're going to change it around a little bit. We're not going to do the actual Bootstrap burger button. In fact, we're going to place our own font awesome icon. However, we're still going to wrap it within the button. So we're going to still do a lot of the same setup. However, we're just going to change what's within the button. So here we're going to write this would be a button. Now for the type, we're also going to write button. And then once we have the button, now we need a class. Now the class is going to be navbar toggler. So this is basically going to allow us to click the button, and then the links would be showing. Then after that, we would need to have another attribute of data toggle. So data toggle, and this would be equal to a collapse. And once we have the data toggle, after that, we would do data target. Now this is going to be targeting the div that we're going to create later on with our links. So basically what we're saying is that once we click the button, our links are going to show up. So here let's set it equal to, let's say the data target is going to be equal to a hashtag and my navbar. Now if you're going to be calling your div differently, obviously you need a different ID. However, since I know that I'm going to be calling my div my navbar, this is why I'm adding this hashtag my navbar. Now, like I said, within the button, what we're going to do is we're going to have a span. Then here, let's create class of toggler icon. And within this class, what we're going to say within the span, that this is going to be our bars. So here we're going to write font awesome. So FAS, FA bars. So this is what we're going to be placing inside. So as you notice, now this is going to be my bars. So this is going to be my toggler icon. Now, obviously, right now, nothing is happening because we still haven't created a lot of stuff. There's no div and there's anything. And you know what? I actually made a mistake because I placed the button within my link. So let me move this outside. So here, this would be a navbar brand. So this would be separate. And the other one is going to be our icon. So this would be the difference. I apologize. There should be a link separately than the button. Now, once we'll have a button, the next one is going to be the div. Now, the div is where we're going to be placing our links. And again, it's only going to be showing up on the smaller screens. So basically, we're going to be working right now on the div that's going to hold all the links. And also on a bigger screen, we're going to have these icon and button. So let's go ahead and let's create this div. Let's say this would be a div. Now, div is going to have class of collapse. And also, we're going to write another class of navbar collapse. Again, so these would be a Bootstrap classes that we need to add. And also right away, let's add a ID. And again, you need this ID to match. So basically, if we're going to have a my navbar here, we need to have the same ID over here. So once we save it, this would be a div with a actual ID. And now let's create a unordered list. Then our unordered list is going to have navbar nav. So this would be the class, and also a mx auto and text capitalize. So first let's do text capitalize, and over here let's write mx auto. Now why we're using the mx auto? As you notice in the bigger screen, what happens, I would want this to be in the middle. Now obviously it is only in the middle as you're looking at it, because what happens, I'm still taking up a lot of space with these two items. However, when I place the mx auto, it makes sure that this margin is always going to be in the middle. So basically I'm saying margin on the left and right for all the links should be an auto. So depending how big or small the items get on left and right, it's still always going to make sure that the links are in the center. Now this would be the reason for this class. Again, let me save this, and this is going to be my unordered list. Now once we'll have the unordered list, now let's create our first list item, and the list item is going to have nav item. So this would be the class again from the Bootstrap. And for the first one, let's add the active class. Now the active class is going to make sure that as we're hovering, notice we're going to have a dark color. So basically first this would be a color of pink, and then obviously as we're hovering, this is going to be the dark color. So this would be the active class. Now within our link, let's create the actual, within our list item, let's create a link. Now again, this is going to be the first link. So we're just going to say that this is going to be the header. So the first one, the actual href, is going to be header. Now this is targeting the ID of header, which obviously would be the header that we created in the very beginning. So within the link, we also need to add a few classes. So first one is going to be class, and then we're going to write nav link class. So nav item would be for the list item, and then the nav link would be for an actual link within the list item. Now once we have the link, now let's write that this would be a home. Now once we have created our first list item with a link, we need to copy and paste it because we need to make a few more of these. So here we're going to have the about, then we're going to have the store, then services, and then the order. Now once we'll have the order, let's start from the very last one, which would be the order. And instead of header, we're going to write that this is going to be the cakes. So this would be the section with the name of cakes, and this would be order. Then the one before that is going to be services. And again, if you're going to have a different sections, obviously you can write whatever you would like. But in my case, I already know what I'm going to have. So again, this is going to be the section with an ID of services. So obviously once I click it over here, you notice that I'm going to a services. So this is how it's going to be working. We're going to be creating sections. We're going to give them the IDs. And once we're going to click on the links, they're going to scroll down all the way to that section. And then one before that was home. So we're going to call this store. And also we're going to change the ID of store. And one before that was about section. So we're going to write about, and also we're going to change the actual ID to about. Now these would be the links. Now after we're done with the links, still within the same div, we would want to place another div which is going to deal with our phone icon all the way on top, then the phone, and then the button that's going to make our cart to appear or disappear, depending or whatever we're clicking on it or we're not clicking on it. So again, within our div, but outside this unordered list, let's create a nav info items. So nav info items, and this is going to be the div. So we're just adding a class. And right away, what I would want to do, I would just want this div. So the whole div, I would just want to appear or disappear depending on the screen size. So here I'm going to add a class of display of none. So right off the bat, this is going to be hidden. However, once we're going to get to the large screen, I want it to appear. So basically I'm going to say display large, and I'm just going to say that this is going to be a flex because we're going to make use of a FLEXBOX. And again, why we're doing this. So you notice the moment I get to the large screen size, my links appear, because the ones I go smaller than a large screen, now I'm going to get my burger icon. So what I'm doing is I only want this phone and the button to appear once we reach the large screen size. So this is the reason for these two classes. So the first class is just going to hide it right off the bat. And then the second class is going to make sure that both of these items are going to appear once we're going to get to a large screen size. Now here we're going to have a comment and we're going to write single info. So this is going to be our comment. And then what is the first thing that we need to do? Well, the first one, we would want a phone. So let's create another div. Now this div is going to have a class of nav info. And this div, I would want to place it using a FLEXBOX. And also I would want to place it in the center. So basically what's going to be happening is, since we're using the FLEXBOX to a parent, notice how we added the flex. This is not by mistake. So we're not saying here display block, we're saying display flex. And if we're adding display flex, this is going to be higher than the actual button because button is bigger. So what we would want is, for this nav info div, we would want to add a class of align items and center. So this is just making sure that the phone and the button are on the same level. And then after that, we would just want to add few more classes. And the first one is going to be deflex. So not only we'll have a FLEXBOX parent for both of these items within the nav info items, also each of these items is going to be a FLEXBOX. Because notice I have a phone icon and I have the phone. So I would want to put them side by side. This is why I'm making this a deflex. And here let's write justify content, and we're going to write content between. So I'm making sure that they are as far as away from each other as you can. And then also I would want to make some margin left and right, but I would only want to do that on a large screen. So I'm going to write mx large, and here we're going to write 5. So this is going to be our parent container. And notice, like I said, we're going to have a parent container that's going to hold this single info. So this would be the single info, but then there's going to be another single info. However, both of these single infos are going to be FLEXBOX parent containers themselves, because notice that now within this container, we're going to have a span. Now the span is going to have a class of info icon. Now these are going to be our classes. So basically the classes that we're creating over here, nav info items, nav info, and info icon, is our classes that we're going to be styling later on ourselves. Those are not a Bootstrap classes. Now once we have the info icon, then we're going to have mx large 3. And again, we're just making sure that only on a large screen there is going to be some margin in between. And here let's write, this would be font awesome icon. So FAS and FA phone. So this is going to be my phone. Now obviously nothing is going to be showing here because we need to work with a large screen. So first let's write that, and then we're going to go and check it out what we have. And the second parent of this FLEXBOX parent container is going to be a paragraph. Now the paragraph is actually going to be where we're going to have our phone. However, we need to be careful whenever we're working with a Bootstrap. Automatically we're going to have some margin in the bottom, and it is an issue if the FLEXBOX parent container is not working the way we would want. So we would want right off the bat for this paragraph to have a margin bottom of 0. So that way we're making sure that there is no margin on the bottom, and then we're going to be both line up the same way. And again, this is the reason for this class. We're just making sure that the div is going to be equal with a button that's going to be side by side. Now the margin bottom, just make sure that both the span and the paragraph are on the same line. So here let's write 4, 5, 6, and let's say 7, 8, 9. Now this would be actually our first nav info. Now we need to create a second info. So this was this first single info. Now we need to create a second one. Now the second one is going to be div with an ID of cart info. So cart info. So this was the div. And then we need to add a few classes. Now again, we're going to call this nav info. So this would be the same class as the first single info. And then again, we're going to do the same thing where we're going to say align items and center. So we're going to make sure that they're both centered. Then we're going to have a class of cart info. And then again, we would want to do the same thing where this is going to be actually also a FLEXBOX parent container. So let's write the same thing. So the flex justify content, and let's write between justify content between, and then again the same thing where we'll have a margin left and right, and we're going to write that this is going to be 5. So this would be again our parent container. Now within the parent container, there's few things that we need to add. So you notice that we're going to have our little icon that we have over here, and then here this would be the text with 2 items, and then last but not least we're going to have the price. So let's write what we're going to have over here. So first let's start with a span. Now the span is going to have a class, our class, cart info, and 2 underscores icon. Then after that we're going to write another class, margin right is going to be only on a large screen. So margin right, but only on large screen, and this should be 3. Now within this span we're going to write that there is going to be a font awesome. So FAS and FA shopping cart. So this would be our cart icon. And like I said, over here we would have the paragraph, and within the paragraph there's going to be again few classes. Now first let's start with an actual paragraph classes, and this is going to be margin bottom 0. Again, we're just getting rid of that default margin that comes with the Bootstrap. Then let's write text capitalize, and then within the paragraph we would want first span. Now this span is going to have the ID, and the ID is going to be item count. And within the span we're just going to write that these would be 2 items, and then within the paragraph we're going to write items, and we're just going to have a dash, and then this would be a $sign. And the last but not least, we're going to have again a span with a class of item total, and within the span we're going to write 1049. So this actually would be a price. So once we have saved everything in our index.html, let me just find where is my actual folder. Open up a folder, and let's check it out what we're going to have so far. So basically this is how it's going to look like. So for now we're just going to have a very basic where we're going to have the item, and once we're going to get to the smaller screen, now I notice that we're going to have all our links appearing or disappearing. However, if we're going to go to a bigger screen, this is how it's going to look like. So obviously what we would need to do is we would need to set up actually a CSS, which is going to make sure that we are styling this. So this is what we're going to do next. We're going to go to CSS, and we're just going to start styling this. Now, before we can jump to CSS, there is a bug that we need to fix. Because notice how the phone icon and the phone are sitting very nicely side by side, because the parent container is a FLEXBOX parent container. However, the same thing is not happening with a cart and with a paragraph that we're going to have. And the reason for that is because, again, I made a mistake, and notice how my paragraph is actually sitting within the span. So the idea would be that I'm going to have a span, and the span is only going to have the font awesome icon. So now I have 2 proper children of the FLEXBOX parent container. Now the first one is going to be the span with a cart, and the second one is going to be our paragraph. So if I'm going to save it right now, and we need to go back and actually refresh, now notice how they're sitting nicely side by side. So this is what we needed to fix. Now once we have fixed our bug in our HTML, next one would be going to a styles CSS and just apply some styles to it. Now here I'm going to write a comment, and I'm just going to say nav links, just so we know what we're styling. And let's start with a toggler icon. Now I notice as I'm hovering or clicking over the toggler icon, I have this annoying outline all around. So this would be the first thing that we would want to change, and we're going to say navbar, and we're going to call this toggler. Now this obviously is a Bootstrap class, so you'll see why this makes a importance whether this is a Bootstrap class or not. So if I'm going to write outline, which would be the property that controls that outline, and if I'm going to write none, let's see what we're going to have so far. So notice that still the outline is existent. However, the reason for that is because we need to also write the important flag, because we need to overwrite the default styles from the Bootstrap. So now notice as I'm hovering or clicking, the outline is gone because we added this important flag. So this is going to be a lot of cases the reason why something is not working, because if you're trying to override the actual Bootstrap class, you need to use this important flag. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful. Then next one, I would want to actually work with this icon. Remember, we created font awesome and we gave it a class of toggler icon. So now we're going to use this fact and we're just going to style it. So we're going to say font size is going to be 2 REMs, and then we're going to use a color, and the color is going to be var, and we're just going to be using basically pink. So we're just going to say this is going to be the pink color. Now obviously colors I'm getting from my custom properties, where I have set them up for the root, for the HTML element in the web page, which would be the root, and I'm just picking the color. Now I'm going to be picking the pink color. Now in a second, let's go over why we're choosing the REM values. But first notice that something didn't work because I had a class and I had a font size, but something is not working. So let's go back to index.html and see whether everything is working. So this would be a toggler, and notice how my spelling is, as always, letting me down, because the spelling should be TO and then 2 G's, and then we're going to have the icon. So once I save it, now obviously I'll have the icon. Now why we're going to be using the REM values? Well, first of all, let me tell you right away that whenever we're using the margins or the paddings by default from the Bootstrap, they also use the REM values. So whenever you're saying, let's say MX, which would be margin left and right, and you're saying 3, that's just some kind of value from the REM values. Now we could have used pixels because one REM value is actually equal to a 16 pixels. Now in most cases. So let's say if I have the 2.5 REMs, I also could have written like this. I could have said font size. Now this is going to be 32 plus 8. This would be 40 pixels. So if I'm going to change this, and if we're just going to comment out the first one, you notice that nothing is going to change because this is going to be 2.5 REMs is going to be 40 pixels. So the question would be, well, why you are using 2.5 REMs if the actual font size can also be written in pixels? Well, you see that REMs are going to be responsive. So let's say that somebody changed their root value, the HTML value, from instead of 16 pixels, like I said before, which would be the value, to let's say 20 pixels. So in my case, I know that my root value is 1 REM is going to be 16 pixels. But let's say somebody changed it to 20 pixels. Now, if you're using the pixels, the issue is that you're forcing your layout to a person who maybe prefers the other, let's say, font size. So whenever you're using the responsive values, we are adjusting to a user. Whenever we were using the absolute values, like pixels, we're basically saying, well, this is how we would want this website to look, and there's no other way, which is fine. However, you'd rather would want to work with a user instead of just forcing your own values, whatever you came up with. And again, you can use the absolute values like pixels. However, using the REMs is just going to make your project a responsive, which I think makes way more sense. And again, if you need more proof, just look at the actual Bootstrap itself, the fact that they are using the REM values. So this is my long rant about the REM values, and from now on we're just going to use the REM values, and we're not gonna again repeat this. So once we have the toggler icon, then let's work with the single link. So I'm going to say nav link, and what I would want with this link, well, first of all, I would want the color, and let's do again the same thing where we're going to have the main pink color. So these are going to be my links. Now, in order to see the links, obviously I need to just click it open. And now I notice now these are going to be my links. However, as I'm hovering, notice that the default color is going to be blue. So this is something that we would need to fix. So we're going to write nav link and we're going to say hover. And now we'd want to change the color. So we're going to write a color, and instead of the pink one or the blue one, we're just gonna write that this is gonna be the black. And again, we're just getting these values from here. They're not magical. They're just colors that I picked over here with my custom properties. Now, like I said before, if you want to change these colors, you're more than welcome to do so. The only thing that we're repeating is the name of the color because we're using it as a variable. Now, once we have set up, we also need to look at how long this transition takes place. Because you notice right now, once we save it, now as I'm hovering, the change happens instantly. And this is not something that we would want. We would want that change to happen, but we would want that change to happen over time. And this for we have the transition property. And for the transition property, we can write it long way or transition property. This would be a shorthand. So if we would want to write shorthand, this is how we would write. So the first value is going to be what properties you would want to affect. Now, in our case, we would be dealing with a color. The color is something that we would want to change. However, we can just write that we would want to affect all the properties that are assigned to this element. Then the second one is going to be the length of the transition. And just so we can see that the change is taking place, we can write 1 second. And then the third one is going to be how the transition is going to take place. So these are going to be the values that, let's say, ease in and out. So basically we start slow, then we move normally, then we end slow. So again, these would be the things that you can just explore more in detail yourself. Now, we're just going to choose different values throughout the tutorial, but this is not something that I'm going to get into because it's really more a CSS. So basically, this would be our basic transition. So once we save it, now as I'm hovering, notice that this is not happening right away. In fact, this is happening over 1 second. So if I'm going to change this to, let's say, 2 seconds, then it's going to take even longer. And last but not least, I would want to change the font size. So I'm going to say font size and let's say 1.5 REMs. So now my links are going to be bigger. After we have set up our links, next we're going to be working on our icons. So whether this is going to be the cart or the actual phone. Now, since both of them have the same class, which would be cart info, this is where we're going to be adding the class and we're going to have most of our styles in there. However, we also have the cart icon. Notice that we're going to have a few things. So we're going to have the cart info icon. So this would be for the cart. Then also we're going to have just a cart info. So this would be also a class over here, which would be for the parent. And then we're just going to have the phone. So let's go ahead and let's start working on this. So in the styles CSS, we're going to write that first we would want to work with cart info. So cart info, and we're going to have 2 underscores icon. Now what I would want, well, first of all, I would want the color to be black. So we can write that this would be main black. And then we're going to write cursor, and the cursor is going to be pointer. So this is going to be for the icon. And again, we can save this and we can just refresh. And the only thing, as you notice, as I'm hovering over this, is now I'll have my cursor. Then after that, let's work with a cart info. So cart info. And let's do a border first. So border. Now for the border, we're going to be using the REM values. And whenever we're working with the border, it's very similar to as we would working with a transition, which is basically a shorthand. So the same way with the border, we can write it a long way or we can write a shorthand. Now the shorthand would be, the first one would be the width of the border. Then we're going to say what kind of border. So we're going to write that this would be a solid, and last would be a color. Now we're going to write that this would be a main black. Then also we would want a color. So let's write color and let's again go with a main black. Now border radius is going to be the edges of the border. So border radius, and let's say that border radius is going to be 2.5 REMs. Now let's save this and let's see what we're going to have so far. So once I refresh, notice first of all I have the border. I also have the actual border radius. So we're coming along pretty well. Now what we're missing is the padding, because we would want to add some padding. And also we would missing the fact that I would want the cursor for the whole thing. So as I'm hovering over the whole button, I would want to have a cursor pointer. So let's add the padding. And for the padding, we have a few options. We can write it, let's say 4 values. We can write 2 values. In our case, we're just going to write 2 values. So the first one is going to be padding top bottom, and we're going to be using 0.5 REMs, and then left and right, so 0.6 REMs. So top bottom 0.4 REMs, and left and right 0.6. Now here, let's write cursor pointer. So this would be in pointer as we're hovering. After we're done with a cart info, I also would want to deal with a cart info hover. So let's write cart info, and let's say hover. So as we're hovering, what should happen? Well, first of all, I would want a background to be main pink. So we're going to change the background. Then after that, we're going to have also different border color. So border color. Now the border color is going to be, again, same thing. This is going to be pink. And then last but not least, we're going to have a color of the actual items, and we would want to set it to white. So color, and let's do main white. So once we save this, let's notice what we're going to have. So once I refresh, notice this is going to be black. However, as I'm hovering, notice that the actual text is turning white. Now the last, what we would want within our CSS is just add this color to a cart icon as I'm hovering over it. So let's write over here that as I'm hovering over the info, something should happen to cart info icon. Remember the first thing that we were working with a cart. And you know what? We can just write over here a comment. So cart styles, just so we can see that it's separate from the nav links. And then let's write over here. So cart info. So as we're hovering over the cart info, we would want to do something with a cart info icon. So we need to place the dot. Then the name of the class is going to be cart info to underscores icon. And then we're going to write a color. And we would want to change the color to a white one. So let's write that this would be main white. So once we save it, everything should be working fine. As we're hovering over the item, notice that both of them, the cart and the actual items, are going to be white. So this would be the HTML and CSS. And now we're ready to move on to our next section. Once we have tackled the navbar, the next item on the agenda is going to be this banner. As you notice, we're going to have a background image in the banner. Then we're going to have a title, and this would be a button. So obviously the button is going to say explore. And notice one interesting part where as you're looking at a navbar and a banner, they take up exactly 100% of the screen, regardless of a screen size. And this is actually done on purpose. Now, obviously, this is not when we have all our links showing. I'm talking about when the links are not showing. But notice as I start scrolling, I can see that my navbar and the banner and exactly 100% of the screen. And this is done on purpose. And we're going to do this using the calc function from the CSS. And I'm just showing you this because later on this is going to become important. So now let's head back to our index.html and let's start working on the banner. First of all, we need to decide where we're going to be placing the banner because we have the header element, and within the header element, we already have the nav. So here let's write that there's going to be end of nav. So this is end of nav. And some people don't like writing end. I don't know, for some reason, whenever I'm working, especially with a Bootstrap with so many classes that we're going to have, somehow this comment of where it tells me that actually the element ends helps me. I know that technically you can skip this and you can just write that this would be another element, which obviously in this case is going to be the banner. But for some dumb reason, again, don't hold me accountable. I just like adding this end of nav because sometimes when I'm copying something, I don't know, some kind of item, it just helps me where I can start from one comment and end all the way to another one. Again, you don't have to do this. I just prefer it this way. So anyway, right away within the banner, we can also write this would be the end of banner, which in this case probably is kind of useless since there's going to be no other item because all our cart is going to be in the banner. And while we're on a subject, let's just write end of header. So let's place these 3 comments. Now what we're going to have within the banner, we need to start with a container, and not just simple container. We actually need a container fluid. And then within the container fluid, we're going to have a row. And for the row, we're going to add a few of our own classes. So the first one is going to be max and height. So this is what we're going to be using to style 100% of a viewport. And then right away, we would want to add few classes actually from the FLEXBOX container. Because if you remember in the Bootstrap, the row actually is a FLEXBOX parent container, and we don't need to add the display of flex like we did before. Remember how we added this display of flex? By default, right away, the row is a FLEXBOX parent container. So we can add 2 classes that are gonna make the content horizontally in the center and the vertically in the center. So justify content center. So this is going to place the content horizontally in the center, and align items center is going to align them vertically in the center. Now within the row, what we're going to do is we're going to first have the column. So the column is going to be 10. That means that on a small screen, this is going to take up 10 columns. However, we would want to place it right away in the center. So we're going to add a class of mxauto. And then let's add another class that we're going to style ourselves, banner. And then the last thing for a column is going to be text center. So this is going to be our div. So let's save it. So for now, nothing obviously has changed. We haven't put any kind of content in here. So let's start with a heading 1. Now the heading 1 is going to text capitalize, and then we're going to write welcome to. So first let's write heading 1 and welcome to. And now we would want to have a strong tags. So strong, and within the strong tags, first we would want a class. Now the class is going to be banner title, because again, we're going to style it ourselves. And then let's write that this is going to be grandmas. So this is what we're going to write over here. So this is going to be our heading 1. Notice this is successfully our heading 1. Now also notice that for now, nothing is working with these align items in the center. We successfully placed everything in the center with justify content, which would place it horizontally, but we didn't do it vertically, and we'll fix that. Just give me a second and we're going to actually do that. So after we have the heading 1, we need to have a link. Now for the link, we're just going to href. Now the href is, let's say this is going to be store. So the section that we're going to be creating later on. And then let's add few classes. Well, the first one is going to be button. So we need to add just this button class. Then banner link. So this would be the class that we're going to use for styling. And then 2 more Bootstrap classes, text uppercase, and margin top bottom is going to be 2. And what we're going to write within a link, we're going to write explore. So once we're going to save this, this is going to be our button. So like I said, the actual cart we were going to do later on. So we are not actually need to be worrying about that right now. Now within the column, after that, we're going to create a cart. And the reason for that is that this cart that we're going to be creating later on, we're going to use the absolute positioning. This guy. Once we're going to create an absolute positioning. So for now, we don't need to create anything else. So we're pretty much done with HTML, because like I said, this one we're going to be doing at the end of the project. So you can just say that this would be, let's say, banner. Then let's say we're going to look for a row, and for the row of max. So right after the column, we can just write that this is going to be store, which we're going to do later in the project. So let me save this. Let me go to styles.css, and let's decide what we would want to style first. Well, we're going to have the cart that we already styled, but most importantly, we'd probably want to start with a banner of getting the background image and setting it up exactly 100% of the viewport. So first of all, let's start like this. Let's say that this is going to be max height. So remember, this was the class that we added for the row. Because the reason right now why we're not adding anything vertically is because we need to have some kind of height. because right now there is no height. Pretty much our banner just is the height of the elements that we're going to have right now. So we can write min height, and let's write that this is going to be 100 view heights, or here like this. And notice what happens. It goes in the center. Now we still haven't fixed everything because we had 100 view heights, and we actually need to use the calc function, like I said before. But for now, at least, it is somewhere in the center. Now, why we're using the min height and why we're using the view heights? Well, whenever we're using the height, we have an option of min height. So this always says that regardless of the screen size, make it at least this screen size. So min height, this is what it would mean. Now, why we're using view heights instead of, again, pixels or percentages? Well, whenever we're using the view heights, we can set it up the actual percentage of the window. So if I'm saying that I would want 100% from the window, I don't need to calculate anywhere from pixels. So again, this is a responsive unit. So regardless of my screen size, this is always going to be of what I'm setting it out to be. Now, if I'm going to add some background, you're going to be able to see what I'm talking about. So let's say background blue, and we're going to save it. Notice this is going to be my row, and let's change this to, let's say, 50. And notice that this is going to be 50% of the view height. Now, obviously, we need to still account for the navbar, but this is going to allow us to always make our calculations regardless of the screen size. We're just going to say, you know what, doesn't matter what is the screen size, I would want certain percentage of the screen. So in our case, for now, we're just going to say 100. And later on, we're going to use the calc function. We're going to fix everything. Now, like I said, we would want some background. So we're going to say background. And for the background, we actually would want an image. So we need to use the URL. And now we need to look for the image. However, here we would need to provide the path. Because if you notice in our file structure, we're going to have the image, but the image is not in the same directory as the index.html. Well, it is, but it is not. Let's say the images are not sitting right next to it. So basically, we first need to go up to a folder, which is in the same root folder as the index. And then we can look for the images, because this is where our image is at. So this is why we're saying 2 dots. Then we're going to have /. Now you notice how Visual Studio Code provides us right away the options. Now image cart is going to be for the images that we're going to place within the cart, because they're going to be smaller images. So what we're interested is the main image container, and then we'll have a header background. So this would be the file that we're looking for. And sure enough, what we have right now is our image. However, there is few things that we will need to fix. Now I'm going to do this a long way, and later on we're going to look at a shorthand version. So we have basically a few properties that can change something. So we're going to have a background position, and we would want to position this image in the center. So we're going to write background position center. Then we're going to have a background size. Now for the size, we have option of contain or cover. Now cover is going to make sure that regardless of the parent container, we're always going to cover it. So once I click save, regardless of whether this would be 10 pixels or 300,000 pixels, this is going to make sure that the background is always going to cover it. Now the contain would actually make the image smaller. So basically it would contain the image. Then after we have the position and size, we also want to make it fixed. And what's the reason for fixed? As notice, we have the parallax effect. If we'll have the image, and as we're scrolling down, the text is moving faster than the image, and this gives us this parallax effect. So in order to control the background, we need to write background, and this would be attachment, and attachment would be fixed, or we have another options. Let's say scroll or initial. So we're just going to go with the fixed. So this is the background is going to be fixed. And last but not least, we're going to have a background, and we're going to write repeat. So whether the background image is going to be repeating or not. And the reason for that is if the image is too small, by default, we're just going to be repeating a bunch of small images. And this is not what we would want, so we're just going to avoid that. I'm just going to say background repeat. Now also notice something interesting, that we're going to have some color over here. You see that here I'll have completely gray. And if I'm looking at our final one, we'll have this overlay, the yellow overlay. So let's go ahead and let's create this yellow overlay. And we're going to do this with a linear gradient. So this would be a actual function that we can use. And this requires 2 arguments. And these would be basically 2 colors. Now, by default, this is going to go top to the bottom. But if you're adding the same color, then it is really regardless of how we're using it. Just make sure that we're adding the comma in between. And then let's write that, again, this would be the color. And what color am I looking for? Now I'm looking for a yellow trans. So for transition. Now this is going to be my first color. And I also need to write that this is going to be var. This way there's going to be no mistake. And the second one is also going to be the same color. So we're going to write var. And again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to have a yellow transition. So basically you can try it out and you can see that you can change these values to different colors. And you'll notice that by default, we're going to start with transitioning from the top and then to a bottom. So let's say we're going to write red and blue. This is going to start from red and go to the blue. But however, it's going to be linear gradient. So it will going to gradually change from red to blue. Now what we're doing is we're using the same color, so you're not going to notice the difference. And also as a third argument, we can write over here where we would want this linear gradient to start from. So instead of top to bottom, which would be default, we can write to left, to right. So those are the things that you can explore on your own if you really choose to. Now last but not least, we're going to have a position and we're going to write relative. And this position relative we're going to go back to, but the reason for that is because, like I said, we're going to be using the position absolute for the card. So we need some kind of parent container. So since this is going to be for a parent container for our card, we would want this position relative. This is the reason for that. And now, like I said, I would want to fix the fact that right now you notice that it is more than 100% of my screen, because you see that we're scrolling actually down. And this is something that we don't want. What we want is for the navbar and for the banner, both of them to take up exactly 100%. So how do we do this? Like I said, we can use the calc function in the CSS. And basically for the calc function, as long as we write a keyword of calc, now we need to write what we would want to calculate. So what I would want to calculate is, instead of 100 view heights, I would want to say, I would want to make this banner 100 view heights minus whatever pixels my actual navbar is. So I'm going to write over here minus 76. Now I'm going to show you in a second where I'm getting the 76 from, but let's just write it with me and let's delete this and let's see what happens. And now notice it's hard to see because there's nothing underneath, because obviously we cannot scroll down. We haven't created any more sections, but we're not scrolling actually down. Everything is set up for 100%. So this is how we can do it using calc function. Now be careful whenever you're doing some kind of calculations, make sure that there's space in between. Otherwise, if you're going to write actually like this, so if you're going to say like this is not going to work. Basically, it's not going to understand what you're trying to say. So make sure that you make spaces in between. Now let me show you where I'm getting the 76 from. So let's go back over here. Let's save it. Let's see how beautiful everything looks. And now if I'm just going to do the inspect, and you can do it anywhere on the page, I just always like to click on element because then right away it shows up where I want it to be. And notice what I have right now. So I'm going to have a 1041, and here this would be a 52. So this is where we're getting the 76, because we're also accounting for the actual values of the padding. So this is how we're getting basically these values over here. And this is why we're using, let's say, 100 view heights minus the 76 pixels over here. Now, once we are done with setting up a background and everything, now the next one is going to be actually a banner and banner title, and also banner link and link hover. So let's write over here banner, and let's write that this would be a color, and the color is going to be var main white. So main white. So this would be the whole text. So everything that's in the banner is going to be color white. Then also let's write some margin, and let's say that this is going to be margin top, and let's say -4 REMs. So I'm just going to write it like this. After that, we would want to work with a banner title. So banner title. And for the banner title, let's write a color. And we would want to be pink. So basically, the banner title was the span that had a class of banner title. So here, let's shoot for a pink color. And let's add some more font size of, let's say, 4 REMs. So now we save it, and now we have welcome to Grandma's. After that, we're going to deal with a banner link, which would be this guy over here. So we're going to say banner link. And what we would want with the link? Well, first of all, we would want font size, 4.5 REMs. Then we would want a color. So the color is going to be main black. And let's add some border over here. Now, again, technically, you can go back and just add a Bootstrap classes for the button. So remember, we had a button, so you can say button, I don't know, outline secondary or button primary, and you can change them like this. But we just want to add our own custom styles. This is the reason why we're adding more CSS. And here we're going to say 0.2 REMs. Solid, and we're going to be looking for a main black again. So this would basically are going to be a border for the button. Now, also we're interested in hovering. So as we're hovering, but what we need to understand is that by default in a Bootstrap, whenever we're adding the button, whenever we add this button class that we had before, there is already transition that's taking place by default. So we don't need to go over here and write that there's going to be some kind of transitioning over time, because this is happening behind the scenes. Now, what we would want just to change the color, so we would want to use the, let's say, default colors. We would want to add our own colors. So we're just going to say banner link, and we're going to be hovering over, and let's write a different background, and let's say that background is going to be main black, and let's just change the color to main pink. So color and main pink over here. Let's save this and let's see what we're going to have. So as I'm hovering, notice that there's going to be a black background, and the color right now is actually a main pink. So this is how we can finish off with a navbar and with a banner. So if we're going to save it over here, and if we're just going to refresh, this is what we're going to have. So now that we have our navbar and the banner set up, we're ready to move on and start working on our next section. Now, the next section that we're going to be making is going to be the About Us section, where we're going to have the title. Then also we're going to have some paragraph, and this is going to be our button. Now, on the right hand side, there's going to be an image. And as you notice, as I'm hovering over the image, there's going to be an outline that moves away, whether I'm moving away from the image or if I'm hovering over the image, the outline is going to be all over the image. Now, before we move on, just to show you that actually with the calc function, everything works. If we're going to do the inspect again, and in this case, if we're going to be going over the actual navbar, which is, I don't think I was doing the last time, notice how I have 1155 times 76. So 1155 would be the width of the navbar, and 76 is going to be the height. So this is the reason why in the CSS we use the 76 pixels. And now we have a 100% view height. So once we have set up the index.html for the navbar and the banner, the next one is going to be the about section that we covered already before. So let's write that there's going to be an about. Now we're going to copy and paste it and of about. And then let's write that this would be a section. Now the section is going to have a class, and the class is going to be the about. And also we're going to right away have the padding top bottom of 5. So basically we're going to add some padding. Then after that, we're going to have the ID, and the ID is also going to be the about. So this is going to be our section. Now after that, we would want to create a container. So let's say we're here container, and within the container, we're going to have the row. Now within the row, there's going to be 2 separate columns. And one column is going to be for our info, and the other one is going to be actually over here for our image. So let's go back and let's say that there's going to be a column. Now, why we're setting up again column 10, meaning for the small screen size, this is going to take up 10 columns. And then since I want to place it in the center, I'm going to say MX auto. So this is always going to place it in the center. And then starting from the medium screen, I actually would want 6 columns wide, this info side. And then the same thing is going to be for the image. So we're going to write over here that MY, and let's say 5. Now the reason for this margin top bottom 5 is for the bigger, or sorry, for the smaller screen, we would want some padding in between them. So once I'm going to save this, notice that this is going to be my first column. Now I can right away copy and paste it and create my second column. Now the second column would be where we're going to be placing the image. And since one of them is going to be bigger than the other one, we can make use of the fact that the row by default is a FLEXBOX container. And I would want to align the image actually in the center of the info. So I can just say align, self, and center. And now this is going to place the image in the center. Now first let's do the image, because this is just going to be very, very straightforward. However, since we want to create an outline, I actually would want a div that's going to be parent div for the image. So let's write over here about image. And again, this is going to be our class that we're going to be styling later on. So I'm going to write container, and within the container, we're going to place first a image. Now where we're going to be getting the image from? Again, we're going to be looking for the image folder, and we're going to be looking for suites 1. So let's go down over here. This is going to be suites 1. So class image fluid. Now this class is necessary if you want images to be responsive within a Bootstrap. Otherwise, if we're going to place without image fluid, the image is just going to be the way it's by default. So let's say if it's 2000 pixels by 2000 pixels, it's going to be 2000 pixels by 2000 pixels. Now this class, the image fluid, makes sure that the image is actually responsive. And as you notice, we have only 10 columns wide, and it's sitting in the center. So these are the two first classes that we added. So this would be for the image. And like I said, the outline we're going to do with CSS. So for now, we're actually done with an image. Now for the info, there's a little bit more work, but it's very straightforward. So first thing I would want to have is this about us. Notice that we're going to have the about us. So let's go back and let's say heading 1, text capitalize. So the first letter of every word is going to be capitalized. So text capitalize. Then we're going to write about. Then also within a heading 1, we're going to have strong tags. And let's write over here class. And the class is going to be banner title. And if this class looks familiar, it is because we already styled this. So I'm basically just borrowing it a little bit. So once I'm going to save it, notice that I'm going to have about. And instead of just creating again, I'm just using the same banner title. And notice how the text is actually getting bigger. So once we have a heading 1, after that, we're going to have some paragraph. And we're going to have a few classes. So the first one is going to be margin top bottom 4. Then text muted, which is going to make this text light gray. And also we would want to do a width of 75, because for a bigger screen, I wouldn't want this text to be all over the page. I actually would want it to be only 75%. So this is what we're doing, this width of 75. So let's write over here lorem, and let's, I don't know, place like 15, 20 words, something like that. So this is going to be our text over here. And last but not least, we're going to work with a button, and we're going to have it as a link. So we're going to have a link, and then again, the href is just going to be hashtag. And here we're going to add a few classes over here. So let's say that this is going to be the class btn outline, and outline. This is going to be the Bootstrap class. So btn outline secondary, and then let's just do text uppercase. And let's write over here that within this link, we're going to write explore. Once we save it, and let's notice what we're going to have. Now, I'm not going to style this right now because later on, we're actually going to create the button over here for the cart. And one of the buttons is going to be like this, button black, and the other one is going to be the pink. So once we style it, we're going to go back and we're just going to add this class over here. Now, later on, once we're going to create these buttons, then we're going to use them. So let's go ahead and let's actually style the about section. So within the styles, what I would want is find where is my about, and let's just create a comment about section. And here let's write first that I would want to deal with a container. And first, what I would want with a container, I would want to create it, I would want to make it basically relative. So about image, and let's write over here container, and position, we're going to write that this is going to be relative. So first we're going to create position relative. Now let's create this outline. However, the thing is with an outline is that we're going to be doing that using the before. So before is a CSS pseudo selector, because basically, as you noticed, we didn't actually create this outline. So what we were going to do is we're going to use the pseudo selector of before, and we're going to create this on the fly. So it's not going to be in an HTML. However, we're going to be showing up because we're going to create it in the CSS. So let's write over here that this is going to be our pseudo selector. So about image and 2 underscores container. And now we need to use this pseudo selector. So let's write over here before. And now, since we're using the pseudo selector, we always need to have content. Always, you need to have content. Even though you're just placing it as an empty content. Now, obviously, you can write something over here, but you always need to have content. Otherwise, this is not going to be showing. And since we're using this position relative for the container, because what you need to understand that we're working with the container right now that's holding the image. We're actually leaving the image alone. You're not going to be able to do the pseudo selector with an image because that is the actual content. Because what we're doing with the pseudo selector, we're actually placing before the content. And this is important. We're not placing in the actual content, we're placing before the content. So let's write over here like this. Let's say, first of all, we would want position, and the position is going to be absolute. Then we're going to have selected as top, and let's do negative. Let's do negative 1.5 REMs. Left, we're also going to do 1.7, let's say in this case REMs. And again, we're using the responsive values. And then let's write the width is going to be 100%, and the height is going to be 100%. So let's write over here, width and height is going to be 100%. Now, nothing is showing as of now because we haven't set up yet the actual color. Now here for the color, we're going to use the outline, 0.5 REMs, solid. And here let's write that we would want a main yellow. So main, and let's write main yellow over here. So once we save it, notice nothing is showing again yet. So we still have a little bit more work to do. Now here we're going to say that Z index is actually going to be -1. So let's write Z index, and we're going to do a -1. Now, once we have the Z index, let's actually delete these parentheses, and then everything is going to be shown. So once we save it, this is going to be our outline. So basically what I'm saying is before the image container, I created this before pseudo element, and then notice the content was empty. Then the position was absolute since we had a position of relative. And then I placed it with a width and a height of 100%. However, we placed it in the outside and we didn't place anything in there. We just used as a outline. So we created for this element an outline, and this is why it's showing over here like this. And obviously the Z index allows us to place it on the back of the image. So this is how this is going to look like. Now, last but not least, we would want to make sure that as we're hovering, the actual space is changing. The positioning of this before element is changing. So here we're going to write about image, and we're going to say container, And here we're going to write hover. So as I'm hovering over the container, what should happen? So we're going to say the before what we created now is going to have a top of 0 and left of 0. So top of 0 and the left of 0. So let's notice what happens as I'm hovering. Notice how it goes back to normal, how it was. Now again, what we would want is transitioning, because we would want this change to happen over time. So let's write a transition, and transition is going to be all. So for all the properties, which in our case is just going to be the positioning, and let's say 1 second, and let's write that this would be linear. So once we're going to save it, notice what happens. As I'm hovering over this, notice how the actual before element is going all around. An outline is very similar to a border. However, the outline has a very great thing that it actually can be negative. So basically we're placing it on the outside. Now, you know what? I actually changed my mind, and what we were going to do is we're going to style the buttons, because we're going to actually use them later on. So let me scroll up and let's see where the body ends, because these are going to be some global styles. So we're just going to call them global styles. Now, probably those are just buttons, so technically it wouldn't be global styles, but what I would want is just to create few classes. Button pink over here, and here we're gonna, for the button pink, we're gonna have a color. Now the color is gonna be main pink, and like I said, we're gonna be using them later on whenever we're working with a cart. And for now, we're just gonna say that this is gonna be main pink. Then the border color is also gonna be main pink. So color. Main, and you know what, not color, we need a border color. So border color, main pink, also main pink. And then let's, you know what, let's just add, just for sake of it, let's just add important flags, just in case we need to overwrite this something. So important. So this is going to be our pink button. Now we're not going to be able to see it right now, but later on we're going to be dealing with a cart, and later on whenever we're going to be dealing with an actual let's say search buttons or something like that, we're going to use it. So here we're going to write button black instead of button pink, and we're going to also change this, the main pink, we're going to change to a main black. So let me delete this, and main black over here. So these are going to be our two buttons. Now we can actually go and test it out if we're going to save it. Like I said, we're going to go back to where is our link. And you notice how we had button outline secondary. So let's just write to btn and black and see whether everything changes. And sure enough, it does. So now we just need to work on a hover effect. So let's go back. And whenever we have the black button, what we would want to change? Well, as I'm hovering over the button, I would want to change the color, obviously. So I'm going to write hover, and the color should be main pink, and the actual background should be black. So let's change this. Background is going to be main black. So again, let's test it out, see what happens, and sure enough, everything is working fine. So the last thing with a button, we need a pink. So what happens as we're hovering over the pink button? So let's go back, let's change this to from the black to the pink, and then the color is going to be the other way. So the background is going to be pink, and the color is actually going to be black. And again, we're not going to see this right now. This is going to be used within a cart. However, this allows us to reuse these buttons. So basically, we create these classes, and we're going to make use of the fact that we can use this button class from the Bootstrap. And then the only thing we're doing, we're basically adding the color. But everything else is already done for us. The transitioning, the padding, the border radius, and all the good stuff. So all we're doing is just changing the color. And like you see, the About Us section should be done. So I can just close right now the Google Developer Tools, refresh, and sure enough, everything is working fine. Now, probably if you want, you can add more text over here. So let's go back and let's say that there's going to be some lorem, I don't know, another 10 words or something like that. And you know what, this is not working right now. So what we need is lorem and like this. So now we can test it out. So now there's more text. So anyway, this would be the about section. And now we can ready to move on to our next section. After successfully completing the about section, our next section is going to be our store section. Now the store section is probably going to be the most complicated one, apart from maybe cart, because it also has a bunch of little things in here. But since the store section, like I said, would be maybe okay, the second most complicated one, then what we're going to do is we're just going to break it up into smaller parts. So in this video, we're just going to look at how we can do the title, then the buttons, and then also this search box over here. And in the next video, we're just going to place these items, and then we're just going to apply a lot of CSS. Now, I also want to point out that maybe in the last video, I might have made a mistake because I didn't show you that both of them are negative. So just in case you missed it, I think while I was recording, I had it as a positive 1.7, but it should be negative 1.7. So I apologize for a mistake. And if you didn't catch it yet, then both of them need to be negative in order for this to work. Then let's go back to index.html. This would be the end of about section. Now, obviously, we need to create a comment. And what we're going to say is that there's going to be store section, copy and paste this, and let's write end of store section. Now within the store section, we're going to start with a section. We're going to apply the ID of store just so we can reach it with a nav link. Then let's add some classes. The first one is going to be store, and also padding top bottom is going to be 5. Now within the section, we're going to have a container, and within the container, there's actually going to be 3 rows. Now each row is going to be responsible for something. The first row is going to be responsible for the title. So we're going to write over here section title, because we're going to reuse this later on. So we're going to say end of section title, and then within the section title, we're going to have a row. Within the row, we'll just want to place a column that's going to be spanning 10 columns wide on a smaller screen. But since this is not going to be spanning all across, we would want to use the MX auto, which is going to make sure that the content is always in the center. Then starting from the small screen, we're going to have 6 columns wide, and the text is going to be always in the center. And since we have this MX auto, even though we're going to go to a small screen, by default, this should go to the left side because we're not filling up the whole space. Since we're adding this class of MX auto, this is just going to make sure that we're always in the center. Now, the only thing that we're going to have in the title is going to be heading 1 with a class of text capitalize. And here we're going to write capitalize. And let's write our. Then we're going to have a strong tags. So let's write strong. Now within the strong tag, again, we're just going to borrow the class that we created before, which was banner title. So maybe it would make a little bit more sense if we would have some kind of global class, since already by now, as you can see, this is not technically used in a banner, but we're just going to go along with the flow. So now you notice this would be our store. So this is what we have right now. Now after that, I think I made some kind of mistake because this should be capitalize, and now this should work. Sure enough, once I save it, everything is working. So this would be the first part of the section title. So this would be actually within our container. Now the next row is going to be the filter buttons. And then after that, we're going to have our input group. So let's keep on working. And here we're going to use the fact that we already have all our buttons created, what we did at the end of our video. So let's have a row, and let's create a comment because this is going to help us. So let's say filter buttons, and then let's write over here that we would want end of filter buttons and of filter buttons here. So this is going to be a row. Now what are we going to have within a row? Well, we're going to have a column that's basically going to start spanning 8 columns starting from the large screen size. And again, since this is going to be by default on the left hand side, what we would want add MX auto. Then as you notice, we'll have a bunch of buttons. So I would want to set up this column as a FLEXBOX parent container. So we're going to say over here, the flex, and we're going to write justify content, and let's say around. So this is going to be for the button. And whenever we're using the round, we're making sure that there's even space divided. If we would be using between, then we would be making sure that there is just space in between and there's nothing on the left and right. Now in this case, if we're using justify content around, we're making sure that there is some space over here. Now if you would use between, then all the space would be used in between the elements. So let's write over here around. Then let's write sort button. This is going to be our class, so sort button. And then last one, since as we're going to the smaller screen, there's an option of wrapping or not wrapping. So these items, whether they should wrap or not wrap as we make the smaller screen size. So notice as they're wrapping, well, the reason why they're wrapping is because we have a Bootstrap class of FlexWrap. So this is going to be our column. And within a column, this is going to be very simple. We're going to have a link. Now the link is going to be a dummy link. Again, we're just going to have a hashtag. Then we're going to have a class of btn, since we would want them all as buttons, but we already have a button black. So we can basically just reuse this class. And let's just add a few things over here. Text uppercase, filter btn, so filter button, and margin 2. So margin basically 2 all around. And then let's add a attribute of data filter. Now this is not going to be for the actual HTML and CSS. We can use this with a JavaScript. So this is the only reason why we're adding this. Don't worry about it. If you're not going to use any kind of JavaScript for filtering, then don't worry about this attribute. This is just for a JavaScript. So once we're going to save it, sure enough, we have our famous first button. And there's really not much else to do apart from copying, paste it 4 more times, and then just changing these values over here. So let me go over here, and let's say that I would want to select this link, and 1, 2, 3, 4. And the only thing we're changing is cakes, and then we're gonna write cupcakes. Cupcakes. I don't know why I'm struggling with such an easy word. Sweets, and then donuts. Donuts would be the last one. Nuts over here. Let's save this and let's see what we're gonna have. So these are going to be buttons. And again, if you are using this with a JavaScript, so if you want some kind of filtering, then you're going to need to make sure that these data filters are different. Because for now, I'm just going to leave them all like this. But if you want to do the filtering, then you're going to have to change this data filter. After that, we're going to have a search box. So this would be after the end of filter buttons. We're going to have a search box. So again, let's create a comment. Search box. And this would be the end of search box. So end of search box. And again, this is going to be the same thing. We're going to have a row. Now within the row, there's going to be a column. So we're going to write column. Now the column is again going to be spanning 10 columns on a smaller screen. We're going to write MX auto since we always want to place it in the center. And then let's add that once it reaches a bigger screen size, column medium 6. So once it reaches the medium screen, this is going to be again 6 columns wide. However, instead of 10, but since again we're using the MX auto, this is always going to be in the center. So using it like this allows us that the content is not spanning all across the screen, so it stays some kind of fixed width, but it is always in the center. Because if you're going to take away this MX auto, then what's going to happen is going to be by default on the left hand side. So this is the reason why we keep adding this MX auto class. And here, this is going to be interesting. We're going to have a column. Now within a column, we're going to place a form. And we don't need an action. We're not going to be using the PHP to collect our data. And then instead of form group, we're going to create an input group. Now again, the reason for the input group, because I want to add this icon over here. So I'm going to have my input, but I would want to prepend this icon. And the way we do this, we're going to have the input group class. We're also going to add margin bottom 3. So just so there's some margin in the bottom. And then, like I said, we need input group prepend, and then we need the actual input. So it's either or. We can create to force the input, or we can create the prepend. But anyway, at the end of the day, you just need some kind of input. Now for the input, I would also want to add ID. Let's call this search item. Then placeholder also would work. And let me just add some space. So I have the suggestions item and 3 dots. So this would be our input. So now the more interesting thing is just adding this input group prepend. So again, this is going to be the div with the class. So input group prepend. Once I open up the div, then within the div, we would need to have a span. Now the span needs a class. Now what would be the class name? Input group, and we're going to write text. So this is going to be the text. And also we're going to have over here a class of search box. Now also we can write right away the ID if we want. So let's say over here search icon, and whatever we're going to be placing with the span is going to be showing. So now the idea here is using the font awesome icon, and we're going to say FAS and FAS search. Let's press the tab and let's see what we're going to have. So this is going to be our input, and the only thing we need to do is actually just style it, and therefore we're going to go to a main CSS, or in our case, I believe this was our, dumb, but styled CSS. I don't know why I'm saying main CSS. It's probably because I keep naming my CSS usually main CSS, and for some reason this one is style CSS. So let's write store, because this is going to be the beginning of the store. And first I would want to have a background. So let's write for the class of store. Background is going to be main gray. So main gray. After that, we're going to have a search box. Now the search box is over here, this guy. So we just want to apply a little style. So search box. And let's write that this is going to be the background of main pink, I believe. So I'm gonna go with the main pink, and the color is gonna be main black. So main black. Let's save this and let's see what we're gonna have with the search box. So we'll have our items, our buttons, because we already have the class of button black. So all this is working, and now we have our search box. So these were the 3 things that we wanted to create. So now we're ready to go on and start working on our actual items. Notice all our cards. And like I said, since this would be a longer video, I just split it up. So in the next video, we're going to start working with these cards, with a shopping carts and the item name and the item price. So right after the search box, we're going to create a store items. So let's create a comment and let's write store items, and again we can copy and paste this, and we can just write that this would be the end of store items. Now for the store items, we would again need to use the row, and we will also need to use the class of store items over here. And then let's write another ID, and let's just say that this is going to be store items. So once we have these values, now this is going to be a row. Now within the row, each and every item is going to be a separate column. And as you notice, there would be a different column width depending on the screen size. So again, we're going to start with a smaller screen. We're going to have each and every single item. However, once we're going to go to the bigger screen, now this would be side by side. So there's basically going to be 2 of them. And third but not least, there should be a items as a 4 columns each. So notice this would be 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to set up a column, and then within a column we're going to place these items. So there's going to be 1 column, and within 1 column there's going to be a card. Now this card is going to contain all the images and the title and the money. So let's go here and say that we're creating a column. Now the column is going to be on a small screen 10 column width. Then starting with a small screen, we're going to say that this is going to be 6 columns wide. And once it reaches a large screen, this is going to be 1/3 or 4 columns wide. Now we need to use the MX auto, since this is going to center if the image is, let's say, 10 columns wide on an extra small screen. So let's not add another 2 classes of margin top bottom 3, which is going to create a margin on a smaller screen. And then we're going to write store item. So this is going to be the first class. And then we're just going to write suites class. And also we can right away have a attribute of data item. And this is going to be equal to a suite. Now again, this is what we're using for the filtering. So if you don't want to filter with a JavaScript, then obviously you can just skip this. Now what we have within the div? Well, first of all, we're going to have a single item. So we're going to write over here, this is going to be our single item. But let's have a comment outside. So we're going to write single item. And then we're going to check it out where our column ends. We're going to write end of single item, because we're going to be copying and pasting the whole item. Now within the single item, there's going to be a card. So maybe let's just delete this comment and let's write that there's going to be a card with a class of single item. So this is going to be our class. And then within the class, first things first, we need a container. Now, why do we need the container? Because we're going to be placing an image, but you notice this cart. So we're going to hold the cart within our container. So within our container, there's going to be an image, and there's also going to be this little cart that only appears as we're hovering over. So this is the reason why we're creating the image container. And then within the container, like I said, we're going to have the image. Now for the first one, we're just going to start with suites. So I'm going to say that this is going to be suites 1. And the way that we're going to do this, we're actually going to create the first card, the first single item. Then we're going to go to CSS. We're going to style it. And then we're just going to copy and paste them, because I think it's just going to be a little bit easier for us to understand. Now I notice what happens if I'm not adding any kind of Bootstrap classes. So this would be my image the way it is actually in the folder. So here we're going to use a class, and the class is going to be card image top. And also let's add store image. So this is going to be our own class. Now once I'm going to save it, notice what's going to happen. So now our image is neatly stored on the top of our card. Then after that, like I said, we need the item. So we need the actual card. And for this, we're going to use the span. And within the span, we're going to have a class. The class is going to be store item. And we're going to call this icon. Now within the span, I would want to have my font awesome. So FAS and FA shopping. And we're going to call this card. So this is going to be my little card icon. Now, obviously, I need to apply way more CSS than I have right now. But at least right now we have the image container that is sitting within the actual card. Now, right outside the image container, I would want the card body. So there's going to be a div with a class of card body. And this is just going to add some paddings and some, some better looking card than the usual one. Now, the reason for why we're not using the card body all around, because I want this image to be sitting against the edges like this. Now, within the card body, there is few things that we need. We need a heading 5 with a name, then the money, and then also we're going to have a display flex. So notice we're going to have the name of the item and the price over here. So let's create first a parent div. And the parent div is just going to have a class of card text. And since we have 2 items and we would want them side by side, we'll use the fact of FLEXBOX parent container. Then we're going to say justify content between. So we're going to push in between the items. So we're just going to make sure that there's more than enough space always in between them. And then let's also use text capitalize. So once we press the tab, this is going to be our text. And here we're going to start with heading 5. ID is going to be store item name. So store item name. So this is going to be the ID, and we're going to call this suite item because the image that we're getting back from is from the suites. So obviously for the donuts, we're going to have the name of donut, and for the whatever candy is going to be candy. So here, heading 5, and again here we're going to have a class. So store item, and we're going to call this value. And here let's start with a $sign, then the strong tags. Then within the strong tags, let's write first of all the ID. So let's say this is going to be store item price, and let's write that this would be actually a 5. So let's write this would be 5, but let's add a class. Let's say that for the class we would want font weight bold. So font weight, and we would want bold. So once we save it, this would be the name, and this would obviously be a price. And the way I have set it up, so suite item number 1 would be $5, cupcake, cake, then donut, and then we're just moving up to $10, $15, and so on and so forth. So basically this would be our basic setup. And like I said, I would first want to style it in the CSS, and then the only thing we really need to do is just copy and paste it. So it's not really much work. The biggest work over here is going to be right now in the CSS. Now the first one, we're going to say single item. Remember we added the class of single item. So we're going to say class of single item is going to be transition. So all the transition should take 0.3 seconds. So we're going to say all, and 0.3, 0.3 linear. So this is going to be our transitions. Then after that, as we're hovering, I would want to have a box shadow, because if you notice, as I'm hovering, notice these shadows. So this is what we're going to do right now. So we're going to say single item, and we're going to call this hover. And as we're hovering, we just want a box shadow. So let's write box shadow. This is going to be 0 pixels. Then we're going to write 10 pixels. So the first one is going to be the X value, then the Y value, then here 15 pixels. And this is going to be blur. And let's write what color we would want. And let's say we would want RGBA 0, 0, 0. You know what? If we're using 0, 0, 0, we can just skip RGBA. We can just write RGB. So now what happens, notice as I'm hovering, this is going to be my transitioning with a box shadow. And again, the reason why we're using transition, because we would want some change to happen over time, not right away. So this is the reason why we did that. Now after that, let's work with a image container. If you remember, that was the thing that was holding the item and the actual image. So let's write class image container. Now within the image container, we're going to use again position relative, because we're going to place this cart with position absolute. So the image container is going to serve as a parent container, and we're going to be able to position the cart regarding the parent container, basically using parent container as a reference. And since we're going to be using some overflow, we're just going to say overflow hidden. And you'll see I'm going to come back why we're using the overflow hidden right now. And just for a cursor, let's say this is going to be pointer. Now we also would want a transition for the store image. And for the store image, we're going to say transition is going to be all 1 second. And again, ease in and out, something like this. And this is going to be for zooming, because again, we would want that change to happen over time. Now, after all the setup, now we can actually start applying some styles for some changes. So first of all, let's zoom in as we're hovering over the container. So as I'm hovering over the container, notice how I'm zooming in the image. So this is what I would want to do first. So let's say that as I'm hovering over the container, so image container, so this is the parent container. Remember that nothing changed. We still have a parent container. And as I'm hovering over the parent container, I would want to zoom in. So the way we do that, we use the transform, and then we use the scale value. So within the scale, we can have, I don't know, 2 times scaling, so 2 times bigger or less than that. So basically, if you go less than 1, then you're going to be minimizing the item. And if we're going to go more than 1, now we're going to be zooming in. So notice I'm just going to write over here 1.2. And again, all I'm saying is, as I'm hovering over the container, something should happen to this image. Well, that something is going to be transformed. And I would want this change to happen over time. This is why I use the transition on the image itself. So let me save this and let's see what happens. Notice right now how I'm zooming in. Now, the only thing that's happening is you see that it's covering that item. But the only reason is we haven't set up the item yet. And everything else is, as you can see, we're zooming in. Now, the reason why we use this overflow hidden, if I'm going to comment this out, see what happens. So now actually my image gets bigger. And this is not something that I would want. I actually would want to have a zoom effect. So that's why I have the overflow of hidden. Now, after that, let's start working with an icon, because this is our next step. Notice this little icon. This is what we need to work on. So the class for the item was the store item icon. So this is the class that we're going to have. And we're going to write position absolute. So this is going to be a position absolute. And notice, check it out. Now it's disappeared. Now the reason for that, we obviously need to set it up where we would want it. So we're going to say bottom 0. And again, this is referencing the parent container. This is the reason why we had it as a position relative for the image container. So again, bottom right 0, notice what happens. So now our little icon is sitting right down here in the bottom to the right. Now let's create some padding. Padding is going to be 0.75 REMs, something like this. And then after that, we're going to have some background, and the background is going to be main yellow. So the background, we're going to use var, and we're going to say main yellow. So once we save it, check it out, we have our main yellow background. After that, we would want to change some radiuses, because notice how our radius is actually over here like this. So this is what we would want to do. So we're going to say border top left radius is going to be 1 REMs. So let's go back over here. Border top left radius 1 REM. So we're creating right now this border radius effect. Now after that, we're going to deal with a transitions, because again, we would want this change to happen over time. So basically, as you notice, as I'm hovering, notice how it appears right now, not right away, but over time. So let's say transition, and again, this is going to be all 1 second, ease in and out. So this is what we're going to do with a transition. And now what I would want by default is to hide this, because again, the idea is like this. As you're looking right now at a item, if I'm not hovering, I cannot see the cart. However, as I'm hovering over the image container, now the cart actually icon appears. And the way we're going to do this, since we have a transition, so this would be the actual transition, but then we're going to write transform. And by default, we're just going to hide it. And the way we're going to say is we're going to say translate. And whenever we're translating, we're using the percentage values. So if I'm going to say translate, the first value is going to be X, and the second one is going to be Y. So what I'm saying is move the item 100% to a right and 100% down. So by default, this icon is going to be hidden because it's going to use the values that the icon has, and it's just going to shift it away. So notice what happens. Now my icon is gone. And what I would want as I'm hovering is for this icon to appear. So again, we need to do the same thing. So we're going to say image container. Then we're going to say hover. So as we're hovering over this container, and we're going to write store item, and icon. And we're going to say that we would want that icon to appear. So we're going to say transform, translate 0, 0. So now what I'm saying is by default, I hide the icon by saying I would want to translate this icon 100% to the right and 100% down. Now as I'm hovering, I would want to move it back, but I would want to do it gradually. This is why we're using transition and we're saying 1 second ease. So now what's going to happen, notice, as I'm over here, as I'm hovering, the icon appears. As I'm not hovering, the icon disappears. And if you notice, the moment we set up the icon of position absolute, it wasn't in the bottom, so it's not anymore expanding to the bottom, the actual image. So we're actually zooming in. And then last but not least, we just want to change the color of the icon as we're hovering. So we're going to say the class name was store item icon hover. So as we're hovering only over the icon, we would want to change the color. So we're going to say color, and the color is going to be main white. So main white over here. And let's just check it out what we're going to have over here. Is it going to work or not? So as I'm hovering, notice my color is changing to a white. And like I said, this was the hardest part of this actual section. And the only thing we have to do is just copy and paste it. Now I have 12 items because I have 12 images for them. If you want to do less, you can always do less. Because this is going to be a little bit redundant what I'm going to do right now, because I need to just basically copy and paste them. So I'm going to copy and paste them 11 times, and then I'm going to change these values over here. So let's say I'm going to say 1, 2, 3. So these are going to be my my first 4 items, and then I need to change obviously the values over here. Now the values are going to be the actual names. So if the first one was the sweets, then as we're scrolling down, the next one is going to be cupcake, and the image name is going to be cupcake 1. And the reason for that is for all the ones, the price is also going to be 5. For all the 2s, the price is going to be 10, and 3s is going to be price is going to be 15. So let me delete this. After that, we're going to have a cupcake, and then we're going to have just cake. So this is going to be cake 1, and the last one is going to be donut. And again, you can put, I don't know, 4 items. It doesn't really matter, because like I said, this is going to be a little bit redundant where we need to add 12 items like this. So let's grab the, again, single item and end of single item. Let's just copy and paste it. This was donut 1. Now we need to shoot for sweets 2. So sweets, and we're going to say 2. Now for the sweets 2, we're going to have sweet item, and we're going to call this 10. And you know what? Also, we missed something. Notice this is not going to be sweet item. This is going to be donut. And I hope that I'm actually spelling it correctly. But I mean, it is what it is. Donut. Yeah. Donut. Yes. Looks correct. And this is not going to be sweet. This is going to be actually cake. Since this is going to be the cake item, right? So we have the cake. And this is also not going to be sweet. This is going to be cupcake over here. So let's notice what we have. So we're gonna have donut item, and you know what, I'm actually gonna do a little bit differently. So I have the sweets, so let me grab this right now. Let me delete this. Let me go back. Let me find where is my first sweet. So this would be sweets. Let me grab this single item. Let's scroll down. Now I have selected all 4 of them. And what I'm going to do is just 1, 2. So basically I created 12 items. And now the only thing I need to do is just change the price. So the last donut is going to be 15, but this is going to be donut 3. Then the cake is also going to be not 51, 15. And this is going to be cake number 3. Then the cupcake number 3. So basically you see what I'm doing. So we're just, for the image of 3, we're adding the actual price of 15, and then for the sweets of 3, we're also going to do price of 15. Then we'll have donut of 10, and this is going to be the picture of 2. Then we'll have cake of 2, which is also going to be 10, and then cupcake of 2, and the price of 10. And yeah, we'll have a sweet. So this is going to be sweet number 2 and sweet number 10. Again, hopefully this wasn't too long. We're going to save this. And you know what? Let's check it out on the big screen. So this is the item that we're working in. And hopefully everything is correct. So we have sweet. This should be sweet. Then we have cupcake, cake, and donut. Then for the second sweet, this would be 10, 10, 10. And sweet third is going to be 15. Basically, this is how we create this store section. So now we're ready to move on to our next section. After we have completed the artist section, arguably in the project, now we're going to do a very easy one where we're going to have a services where basically we're going to have just an icon, a name, and some text over here. And obviously there we're going to have 3 icons, and each of them are going to have different text. Now these are going to be the icons that we're going to have from the icon finder. So we still need to do the same thing as we did before with our actual image. Whenever we have our brand image, now we're going to do the same thing with these icons. So what I would want to do first is just grab these icons, and you know what, we can just get maybe all of them over here, cut them out, and let's scroll down where we're going to have a services. Now within the services, we haven't done anything, but we're going to have end of store section, and we're just going to copy and paste these icons because we're actually going to use them within our services section. So let's create first a comment of services, then we're just going to copy and paste this, and you know what, we're just going to write end of services, and then within the services we need a section. So section ID services, and then we're going to have also a class of services, so services. And after that we're going to have a padding top bottom 5. And now let's figure out what we would want in the section, where we would want first a container, and then within the container we're going to have a row. Now within the row there's going to be a single service. So again, comment, single service, copy and paste, and of single service. Now within a single service, this is going to be one of the columns. So we're going to say that starting from a medium screen size, this is going to be spanning 4 columns, and text should be in the center, and margin top bottom 3 for the small screens. So let's write over here column medium 4, text center, and margin top bottom 3 over here. So this is going to be our single service. Now we're going to start by placing an image, and we're just going to say over here that images, and we're going to start with a bread icon. And then after we're going to have, I don't know, let's write over here for alternative also bread icon. Let's write as a heading 6. Let's write text uppercase. This is going to be a for heading 6. And also we can add some margin top bottom 3, service title. So this is going to be the class, service title, and we'll write bread. And now we're going to do the paragraph. So at the end of, I'm sorry, not like this. At the end of the heading 6, we're going to have paragraph. Now this paragraph is going to be spanning only 75%. This is the reason for this class. And also class of MX auto, text left, because I would want my text to be left, because by default this is going to be text center. And then we're going to have service text. Service text is going to be our class. Now within the paragraph, I don't know, 20 words, something like this, and say this is going to be our bread. So this is each and individual service. Now this is where we would want to grab the comment that we have for the icon. So this is going to be our first one for the brand. So we can just say right next to the image, this is going to be actually our text. And after that, we would just want to copy and paste this service. So let's copy and paste this 2 more times. So 1, 2. And here we're going to be changing these values. So you know what, maybe I shouldn't have copied and pasted the first time, but I mean, it is what it is. So this was the 3rd one. Again, we're just going to cut it out, and we're going to go back and copy and paste it here, and we're going to delete this guy here, and this is going to be our 2nd one. So basically what we're doing, we're just adding these comments. Now it's up to you. If you really want to skip that, you don't have to do it, but I mean, it's kind of not a nice thing to do, because if this is the only thing they're asking, you mean, might as well do that. Now why I have the name here, I have the name for the artist, and this is basically where you can find them. So this would be the URL and the name of the artist. Now our 2nd one is not going to be bread. This is actually going to be cupcake. And I know that the icon says yogurt, but for some reason the name is cupcake. Now it's not for some reason I had the name of cupcake, but it brought me a yogurt, so I just went with it. So this is going to be cupcakes. And last but not least, we're just going to have candy. So this is going to be candy, and it's not going to be bread icon, it's going to be candy icon. And again, if we're going to go over where we have them in our folder, if we're going to go back to our setup folder, then images, and then notice that here we're going to have a bread icon, and this would be a cupcake icon, and somewhere there should be a candy icon. Now, by default, I made them 64 by 64. This is why we don't need to change anything there. So I pretty much downloaded them small already. And once the HTML is set up, now let's do the CSS, because as if you notice, we're going to have some background. There's going to be an image, and we already did that on a banner. But this is going to be a little bit of repetition. And this is where we're going to look at a shorthand value, because as we were covering the banner, we actually used the long version where we had background position, size, attachment, and repeat. Now in this case, we're going to skip some of them. We're just going to write a shorthand version. Now, first things first, we need a comment. So we're going to say services. So this is going to be services section, and we're going to be targeting the class of services. Now the class of services is going to have a color. So first we're just going to say color, and this is going to be white. Now, why we're having a white color? Because we're going to have the image in the background. So once we have the color white, notice that everything disappears. So we cannot see the text, which is fine because we're going to set up a background image. Now here again, we need to have URL. So for the background, this is going to be the URL. And now we need to look for the images. So we're going to say images, and then we'll have a services background image. And like I said, we're going to write as a shorthand. So instead of background position, we can just write center dash forward slash cover. So this would be for a background size, then fixed. So this should always be fixed, and no repeat. So the image should never be repeating, and the actual background attachment should be fixed. So once I save it, notice now I have my image. Now again, I would want to add a linear gradient. So basically some overlay color. In this case, however, we're not going to be using our colors. We're just going to say RGBA, which stands for red, green, blue, and the last one is going to be opacity. Now, if you remember previously, we didn't use the RGBA values. Now, in this case, we are. So what I'm saying is that this is a black color. However, the opacity is 0.6. So it's not all the way dark black. It's basically going to be something like gray. So it has 0.6 transparency. Now, this transparency value, the last value, runs from 0 to 1. And obviously, if it's 1, then it's not transparent at all. If it is 0, then it's totally transparent, so you cannot see. So 0.5, let's say, would be something in the middle. So 0.6 would be a little bit more than middle, so it would be basically darker. So again, RGBA, and we're going to do the same thing what we did before. If you remember, if we have the same values, then basically the only thing we need to do is this is not going to change. Now, the mistake over here is we need to have a comma. Otherwise, nothing is going to be showing. And even though we added the comma, nothing is showing. And I think the mistake over here, because I have 4 zeros. So let me delete this and let's see what happens. And now, sure enough, everything works. So again, the RGBA values can be used if you want to change the opacity. So notice I didn't want to have just some black overlay. Instead, I wanted to have a black color with some transparency. Now, after that, let's work with a service title, since we have our background. And let's write service title. And let's say letter spacing like 0.5 rems. So notice the title right now, we're going to have some letter spacing. And the last one is going to be service text. So this is going to be this. And we're going to write that there's going to be some word spacing. So first we looked at a letter spacing. This is going to be a word spacing. So service, and we're going to call this service text, and let's say word spacing. Now word spacing is going to be 0.5 REMs. And let's check it out what we're going to have. And sure enough, now we'll have some word spacing. So this would be it for a services section. We can go and check it out on the bigger screen, how it's going to look like. So once I'm going to scroll down, notice this is going to be our service section. So now we're ready to move on to our next section. Following the services section, we're going to be making the order cake section. However, I need to warn you right away that I'm using the images from stick PNG, and obviously you can access them in the folder if you have downloaded the setup folder. However, they have a pretty strict policy on using the images for commercial purposes. So it's fine for me to actually use it for educational ones. But if you're going to decide to use them actually commercially, you need to make sure that you're actually complying with their policies. So that's just a side note. So anyway, this is going to be the order cake section. We're all going to show what kind of cakes we can make. So let's say birthday, custom, and wedding. And over here, these would be the buttons. And obviously, these would be the cakes over here. So let's go ahead and let's work in the index.html. And this section is going to be interesting because we're going to be able to pretty much make everything without any CSS. So all the work we're going to do in the index.html. So I'm going to say cakes, and then we're going to write end of cakes. Once we're going to have the cakes, now this would be the time for the section. So section and ID, again, for the navbar. Let's write cakes. And let's have a class of cakes. Now, also we're going to have a class of padding top, bottom 5, just so we're going to have some padding over here. So this is our section right now. Now, first we're going to create a container. Now within the container, there's actually going to be a title. So let's go ahead and let's find our title. So I'm going to press Command F because I'm on a Mac. So we're just going to say over here that we're looking for a section title. So once I go up, notice that it finds me the first section title that we're looking for. And hopefully this is exactly the one that I need with a banner title and everything. So I can just escape right now and copy and paste this, go all the way to the bottom of the document where I'm working for, and this is not what I wanted, copy and paste it, and now I have my section title. Now instead of our store, we're gonna say order cake. So cake and order. Once we save it, now we'll have our title, order cake. After the title, we're gonna have our row, and within a row, there's gonna be 3 cakes. So first, again, we need to make sure that I'm not sitting in that row. No, I'm not, so everything's fine. And let's write that this is gonna be single cake within a row. So single cake. And we're just going to copy and paste it again. And we're going to say end of single cake. Now, once we have end of single cake, now let's start placing everything that we would want. So here, there's going to be a div. This is going to be a column 11. So on a small screen, this is going to be 11 columns wide. Again, we're going to center it. So we're going to have MX auto right away. Then once it reaches the medium size screen, we're going to add a column medium 6. And once it reaches the big screen, the large screen, we're going to say this is going to be 4 columns wide. So basically, this is going to be the setup. And also for the smaller screens right away, we're going to have a margin top bottom is going to be 4, just so there's some text, some space. Text capitalize, and text enter. So these are the 2 classes that we're going to be adding. So this is going to be my parent div. And then we're just going to go down the line pretty much of adding the texts. As you can see, it's not really some kind of brain surgery, right? This is heading 3, and then we'll have paragraphs, a button that we already have styled actually in the CSS. So the only thing we're going to need is to add the class. And yeah, and then we're going to have image all the way in the bottom. So heading 3, birthday cake. But first, let's add a class of padding top bottom 3. Let's call this birthday cake, and let me save this and let's see what happens. Again, let's scroll down, birthday cake. So it looks about right. Then we're gonna have text muted. So let's just add a div with a class of text muted, and within this div there's gonna be a paragraph with a class of margin top bottom 3. and let's call this a birthday cake. And you know what? This is not what I want. This is a class that I'm adding. So if I would want to add some kind of text over here, I would need to write birthday cake with a name. And sure enough, now I have my paragraph. And again, it's going to be birthday cake with a name. And let's just copy and paste this because we just need three of them, three more. So 1, 2, 3. And let's just change these values over here. So let me delete the first 3. Let's delete this and let's write over here different values. So escape again, go up, custom, ingredients. Hopefully I'm gonna be spelling it correctly. Ingredients. I think I looked before, but anyway. So we're gonna have ingredients. Now after that, there's gonna be custom size. And the last but not least, we're gonna have custom design. Custom design over here. And now this would be the time for the button. And again, we're gonna do this actually within div. So we're gonna stay within div and we're gonna write button. Now the type is gonna be button. And then we're gonna look for a few classes. So class, btn, btn, and instead of black, we're gonna use pink. Remember how we created that class. Text capitalize. And then we're gonna have margin bottom 3. Margin bottom, and this is gonna be 3. And we're just gonna write order now. So this would be the name over here, what we have. So once we have set it, notice this is gonna be our button. And see how everything is working in the CSS because we obviously already created a class. Now last but not least, we're just gonna have one more paragraph. Now this is gonna have a class of text, lowercase. Margin bottom is gonna be 4, and we're gonna write starting at. So starting at, and we're gonna write $5 over here. And here, let's do the image right now. So let's say that image source is gonna be again images folder and transition cake. So basically, I wrote as transparent cake. So this would be my first one, the cake, and then we're gonna have custom and wedding. So these are the next two that we're gonna be using. And one important class that we need to use is image fluid. So it actually fits nicely in there. And sure enough, this is gonna be our birthday cake. So the only thing left to do is again grab the single cake and just change these images. So we're gonna have end of single cake. We're gonna copy and paste it 2 times. And instead of cake, we're gonna have transition custom, or let's see which one was next. So custom was the second one. So this would be a wedding, and this is gonna be the custom, and let's change this one around. So we're gonna have transparent custom cake. Let's save. And yeah, sure enough, everything is working and our section is ready. So again, let's check it out in a bigger screen, how this is gonna look like. And this is gonna be our order cake section. So now we're ready to move on to our next section. Now, right before we do the card, we're gonna finish off with a footer. And then we're gonna do, again, arguably the hardest section, or maybe the second hardest section in the project. So let's go ahead to index.html. Let's scroll all the way to the bottom. Now in this case, we probably don't need to add any more comments. We can just write that this is going to be a footer, and within the footer we're going to have a class of container fluid. So container fluid, and once we're going to have a class of container fluid, then we're going to work on a row. Now as you notice, we'll have a 2-column layout, where one is going to be taking half the screen starting from medium screen size, and the other one is going to take another half. So let's go back and let's write that this is going to be a column medium 6, and then let's add a footer title. So this is going to be the class that we're creating, and let's say that this is going to be padding top bottom 5. Now within this div, we're going to have a heading 1. And then basically this is going to be title. Now within this heading 1, there's going to be class of text capitalize, and text center. So these are the two classes. And also we're going to place it in the strong element, and let's add this class of banner title. Now the famous banner title class. And let's just call this Grand Mouse. And let's see what we're gonna have so far. So this is gonna be our Grand Mouse. Now after that, let's work with a div where we're gonna have our icons. So notice this would be the title, and now we just want to work on the actual font awesome icons as links. So let's say div, and this div is just gonna have a few classes. So footer icons, and then we're also gonna have margin top 3, display flex, because I would want them side by side. So we're gonna make this parent container as a FLEXBOX container, justify content, and yeah, let's do around. So we're gonna have some spaces on left and right, and for the smaller screens we would want to do flex wrap. So as the screen size gets smaller, if there's not enough space for the icons, they're just gonna wrap to the next line. So link. Now for the link, this is gonna be a simple hashtag. Class is gonna be footer icon. This is gonna be the class that we're gonna be styling ourselves. And here we're just gonna have a few different social media icons. So FAB, because this is what we need to use for Font Awesome. FA Facebook. This would be our first one. So let's see what we have. And if everything works correctly, this should be fine. So now let me copy and paste this, and there's gonna be what? 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. And here we're gonna change these values basically. So let me delete all the Facebooks. Well, not all of them, but basically the 3 extra ones. Let me delete this again, and let's start working here. And let's do Twitter. Then the second one is going to be Instagram. And the third one is going to be Google Plus. Sure enough, these are going to be our 4 icons. So this would be one column that we're going to have. So this is going to be one column. And now let's create a second one. So let's say that again, this is going to be a column, medium 6. So starting from medium screen, then another class footer contact, our class text center, text capitalize. So text is going to be center, and every first word is going to start with capital letter, and padding all around is going to be 5. So this is going to be this div. Then we're going to have a heading 3 with a class of margin bottom 5. And here we're going to write contact. So this is going to be the name in heading 3. So as I scroll down, this is going to be my contact. And after that, we're just going to start working with each and every contact pretty much. So there's going to be a icon and whatever the name is. So this would be basically address. This is phone. And this is going to be over here the email, obviously. So after we'll have a contact, now let's create a paragraph, and the paragraph is going to have a few classes. Well, first of all, you notice that this is going to be a flex container. So we're going to write over here the flex for the paragraph, and we're also going to write flex wrap, because as the screen size gets smaller, we would want it to wrap. Now what we're going to have within this paragraph, we're going to have a span. Now the span is going to have few classes, and this is not what I wanted. So I need to write class, and margin right is going to be 4. And also let's do the same thing where we'll have a footer icon. So the same way how we're going to be styling these icons, we're also going to style the contact icons. And now within the span, we need a FA map. It's going to be the first one. And also we're going to write another span as a actual text, because you notice that if this is going to be the FLEXBOX parent container, if I'm going to try to write something within the span, then this is not going to work. So I need to create another span where I'm going to write the text, and the text is going to be Main Street San Diego, and let's say probably too many commas or not enough commas, and 01 101 or 202, whatever. I mean, obviously this address does not exist as far as I'm concerned. So this is going to be our map, and then we need to add two more things, which is going to be the phone and the email. So here we're going to change the last one right away to envelope, and this is going to be our email. So our email is going to be email@email.com, and memail, not memail, actually email.com. So let's save, let's see what we have. So this is going to be our email. However, our envelope is not showing. So we need to decide what went wrong and why we have envelope. It's probably, because my spelling as always is excellent. So email@email.com, and here the second one is going to be what? It's going to be not street name, not email, phone. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and here we're going to say phone. So I believe the actual font awesome was phone, and sure enough it was. So this would be our HTML, and now let's just go to CSS and style this. So let's write footer, and here we'll have a comment. Now we're going to start with footer title. Remember, we were dealing with the footer title. And for the footer title, what we would want is background, basically back. So background, and we're going to do main black. And what happens for this column, basically, this should be main black. And obviously something went wrong because this is not working. So I have footer title, and something probably my spelling again gave up because I messed it up. So I'll have a banner title, now footer, and this should be footer title. Now I don't know why I put it just as a footer, because this should be footer title. Now let me save this, and sure enough, now everything is working over there. Now after that, what we're interested is in basically dealing with other things that we're going to have, which would be footer contact. So now this is going to be main gray. So let me go down, and let's say footer contact. So this would be the other column that we're going to have. And here we're going to have a background of main gray. So let's see what we're going to have over here. So this is going to be our second one. So these would be our two things. Now after that, let's deal with an icon and with icon hover. So footer, and let's write that this would be footer icon. And within footer icon, we're going to first say font size. So let's make the font size bigger, 1.5 REMs. And sure enough, now our icon's gotten bigger. Color is going to be main white. And transition, because as we're hovering, there's going to be different color, but we would want that change to happen over time. All 0.3, or you know what, 4, since I mistyped, let's do 4. Ease in and out. And the last one is just going to be hovering. So actually, as we're hovering, something should change. So footer, icon, hover, and here let's write color is going to be main pink. So main pink. Let me save this, and let's see what we're going to have. Now as I'm hovering, notice that this is going to be actually pink, and so will this be. Now there's a small bug. We need to do something about, you see these, we have these basically empty spaces on the left and on the right side. And the reason for that is because you notice container fluid, we missed a row. So now let's create a div with a class of row first. And once we're going to have a class of row, now we'd want to copy and paste pretty much everything that I have in here. So both of the columns. So there's two ways I can do it. I can just delete the closing tag right now and go in the bottom and find the footer. Then this is going to be my column, and I'm sorry, my container, and here we're gonna have the ending div. So once we're gonna save it, everything should be working fine, and sure enough it is. So now we have our footer ready, and we're ready to move on and proceed to the cart. Now before we do that, let's just check it out that everything works fine on a bigger screen, which it does. So now we're definitely ready to go and start working on the cart. Well, if you made it this far, I have no doubt that you're gonna enjoy the part of creating the cart. Now, even though it does not seem like much, what we need to understand is that we need to deal a lot with a FLEXBOXes, because each and every item is going to be FLEXBOX parent container. Because you notice we're going to have a photo, then this is going to be some text with a price, then this is going to be over here the icon to remove, and then we'll have total, and these are going to be 2 buttons. So even though it doesn't seem like much, there's going to be quite a work involved. So here we would be all the way in the bottom. So what I would want is scroll back up to the banner where we left off and where we just created the comment for a cart. Remember, we had a banner, and here this would be the store. So basically, instead of store, we're just going to say that this is going to be the cart. And again, the reason why we're placing within this row is because we're going to use the absolute positioning in order to place it within the row. Now within the row, the first things first, maybe also let's scroll up in our live preview and let's start placing the cart items. Now for this, we're just going to say there's going to be div with the class of cart and with an ID of cart. So those would be the 2 things. And obviously, as of now, the moment we're going to do the setup, this will going to temporarily mess up our whole setup, because we assuming few things here with the column. So in this case, we're just going to change some things around here. Now, after we'll have a card, next one is going to be cart item. So here again, we're going to start with a cart item class. Then we're going to use a dflex for a FLEXBOX parent container. And again, what we're creating right now, this single item. So this single item is going to be a FLEXBOX parent container. Now after that, we're going to have justify content between, because we want to push away the items as far as possible. So justify content between. Then we're going to say text capitalize. And last but not least, there's going to be margin top bottom 3. So this is going to be our card item. Now within the card item, first one is an image. Now the difference is going to be where we're getting the image, because if you notice that within our folder, there's actually 2 image folders. One is going to be for images and the other one is going to be for the card. Now the card ones are smaller, so they're actually 50 by 50. So instead of placing the big ones in a cart and then doing it in a CSS, I just actually made them right off the bat smaller ones, and now they're 50 by 50. So instead of image, we're going to say image cart. So this is the folder, and then we're looking for some kind of item. So let's say that this is going to be cake number 2. Doesn't really matter what item are we using. However, we still need to use the class image fluid, and we're going to do rounded circle. Now one class is just going to make sure that the image always fits, and the second one is going to make sure that the image is rounded. Then we also can do the item image, so item img, so this would be for the ID. And once we'll have the image, the next one is going to be text. Now for the text, we're first going to have the div, so item, text, and within this div, there's going to be paragraph. Now the paragraph is going to have the ID, cart, item, title, and then within the paragraph, we would want to write cart item, and let's write that this is going to be a class also. So within this paragraph, we're going to write class. Now the class is going to be font weight, and let's do bold, and let's also write margin bottom is going to be 0, and let's see what we're going to have so far. So like I said, this is going to mess up our setup, but we don't need to worry right now because once we're gonna work with CSS, we're gonna fix everything. So far we're gonna look at our cart this way. Now also, when we have a cart item, we would want a span, and within a span we're gonna have a place a $sign over here, and then last but not least there's gonna be another span. So this was for a $sign, and then we're gonna have span. Now this is gonna have the ID, so we're gonna say ID cart item price, and let's write that this is also going to be class of cart item price. So cart item price, so the ID and also the class. And last but not least, let's do margin bottom 0 to get rid of the default margins, and let's write the price. So let's say $10.99. So as you notice, we're going to have cart item, then the value is going to be within the span. So this obviously is going to be $10.99. And you know what? There's actually, again, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. We need to close this. So the paragraph actually should be closed. So this should look like this. Notice we're going to have the image, then the paragraph over here, and then we're going to have two spans. One is going to be for the $sign, and the second one is going to be for the actual amount. Now, last but not least, right outside the div, so right outside the text, let's do a link. And for the link, let's have it as, again, a hashtag. Then ID is going to be cart item remove. So this is going to be the ID. And then we're going to write, again, the class the same name. So class is going to be cart item remove. So these are going to be the class and the ID for the link. Now within the link, we're going to place a font awesome icon. So FAS and FA trash. So this is going to be our trash icon. So once we save it, notice this is what we're going to have. Our trash icon and everything that we already covered. So this would be our single item. Now what we would want is copy and paste it and make two of them. So cart item, let's see where this one ends, and this is going to be the end of cart item. End of cart item. And now what we are interested is copying pasting this wonderful cart item and create another one. Basically, when I say create another one, we're just going to create another image. So we're going to look what kind of image we're going to have. I don't know, cupcake one or something like this. So again, we're not going to change any values over here. I mean, this all can stay the same. Now, after we have two items, let me close this. What we're going to have is a total, and then we're going to have these two buttons. So let's go ahead and let's see where we're going to have the end of cart item. Now this is going to be our cart, and still within the cart, but obviously outside the cart item. Let's do cart total. So div cart total container. Again, this is going to be the class name that we're going to be styling later on. Now again, the same thing, like I said, there's going to be a bunch of flex boxes. So again, we need to justify content between or around. We can just say over here, and once we're going to have justify content around, then also we can do text capitalize and margin top 5. Let's save this. This is going to be our total. And then within the total, we're going to have a heading 5, which is going to write total, and another heading 5 with a $sign first, then a strong tags. So strong tags. And you know what's not working because I need to create a space. Strong, and within the strong, let's add an ID, cart total, and class of font weight bold. So class font weight bold, and let's write some price. So I don't know. The total is going to be, let's say, $10. So this would be our total. And last but not least, again, we need to write a cart buttons. So again, outside this total, so total, let's see where the total ends. End of total. Now let's create buttons. So this would be our cart, and these are going to be our buttons. So cart buttons over here. Now what we're going to write within the cart buttons, there's going to be div cart buttons, container, margin top 3. Let me scroll down so just so we can see better. Then we're gonna have the flex. Again, this is gonna be FLEXBOX. The flex, justify content between, justify content between, and here we're gonna have 2 links. Now these links are gonna be a buttons, so we're just gonna have to add our classes. So let's start with the link. This is gonna be hashtag over here, hashtag, and then we're gonna write that there's gonna be ID. The ID is gonna be clear cart. This would be our ID, and classes. So class is gonna be button, and for this one we're gonna have button black. Now after that we're gonna do a text uppercase, and so this is gonna be our button over here. And let's write over here. So let's say clear cart, and this should be our black button that we already created before. And now we need to do something really similar, where we're going to be working with another button. Now this is not going to be black. This is actually going to be pink. This would be the pink button that we created before. We were going to call this checkout. And yeah, this would be it probably for the HTML. So now this is going to be our layout. Now obviously there's few things that we need to add with a CSS. So once we're done with HTML, let's go to style.css. Now again, it really depends. If you want to go up on the top, you can do that, but I'm just going to write over here. So I'm just going to say this is going to be the card, and just because it's position absolute anyway, so it doesn't really matter where it is. We're going to do cart position, and like I said, we're going to do position absolute, because what we would want is take it out of the normal flow. So for now, it's going to be sitting over here right now in the middle. Now this is not going to be the final location, but anyway. Now we're going to say min height for this sucker is going to be 10 rems. So we're going to make it a little bit bigger. Anyway, once we have the min height, now I'd want to do a background. So let's do not background visibility. I'm going to say background, and this is going to be main white. So main white. Let's save this, and sure enough, now we'll have our background. Then we would want to position it. So for positioning, we're going to say top 0, right is going to be 0. And now we need to again start working with a transitions, because what's happening is that obviously as we're going to be clicking or showing or hiding, there's going to be some kind of transitioning. Now before we do that, let's just add a width of 18 rems over here. Now we're now also going to add some padding. So let's do some padding of 2 rems top bottom and 1.5 rems of actually left and right. So this should be actually our card. Now the card is ready, but as you can see, there's quite a few things that we still need to do. Now first, let's just work with this item, remove class. So I'm going to say cart item remove class remove, and here we're going to do a color of main pink. So obviously what we're doing right now is creating these trash icons to be pink. And then we're going to add a little bit of transitioning. So I'm going to do a transition. Then we're going to say all 1 second ease in and out. So as we're hovering, what should happen? Again, let me create more space. Cart item remove hover. And as we're hovering, we're just gonna say that it's gonna get bigger, so transform scale, so something similar that we did with an image. And yeah, and we're gonna do a different color, so color main black. No, main black. Where is my main black? Main black, main black. So now we have the main black. So as we're hovering, sure enough, it changes to blue, and it also gets a little bit bigger. Then we're gonna have cart item price. So cart item price, and we're gonna write font size is gonna be 0.8 rems. So now we have our setup. So basically this is gonna be our cart. Now obviously there's few things, not anymore that many, but there's few things that we actually need to do. And that's gonna be with actually showing the item as we're clicking the button. Now in order to do that, we're gonna have to change some things around, because right now it's basically sitting there by default. So what we would want is, as we click the button, we would want either to show the cart or to hide the cart. Now in order to do that, we're gonna have to change the width and padding within my cart. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna change this around. Like I said, first we're gonna have a transition. So we're gonna do a transition, and then we're gonna say that all the transitions are gonna be 0.3. So again, I don't want those changes to happen right away, so I'm gonna say 0.3 seconds. Now this is gonna be my transition. Also, you know what? We can just change the background, and let's change from main white. Let's just add some opacity. It's gonna look a little bit better. So RGBA, and you know what? We're not gonna do a black one. We're gonna do a white one. So 255, 255, 255, and 0.5. So right now we're just gonna have a little bit of transparent card. And then now the most interesting part. First, let's create a show cart. This is going to be the class that we're creating. And let's move the width and the padding to a show cart. So let me remove this from the cart, and let's add it over here. And also let's add the transform property with a rotate value. So rotate, and we just want to rotate Y direction. So I'm going to say negative 360 degrees. So now this is going to be the actually rotation. Now again, notice that the cart is showing, but it's missing a lot of things, because we removed the width, we removed the padding, and the transform obviously we cannot see right now. Now what I would want is to actually add a width over here of 0. So by default the width should be 0. But also I would want to add the overflow hidden. So I would want to say overflow hidden, because right now what you see that the card is somewhere here. So let me save it, overflow hidden, and now the card is completely gone. And basically this is the same idea that we have been doing already before, where our card was showing. Now what we were going to do right now is we were going to say that we would want this class to be added whenever we click the button. So whenever we click the cart button. Now, as you can see, what we were going to do with a button is we're just going to either add the class of width of 18 and padding and transform, or remove the class. So let's say last thing, we're just going to target the cart item, and let's add also transformation here. So let's say transition all 2 seconds, ease in and out. So once we do this, notice what's going to happen on the large screen. So let's open up in a large screen, Grandma's project. Let's save this and let's check it out. Now again, the reason why everything is working is because we have already set up our JavaScript. Now, if something is not working, you need to go over and make sure that the actual classes match. Now, as you notice, if I'm gonna have the JavaScript, then we're gonna go to app.js. You notice how I'm selecting, first of all, get element by ID. So what I'm selecting is the cart. So let me go up over here, and you see the cart item. Now another cart item, and this is going to be my cart. Now we're going to have cart and cart. So what I'm saying is I'm selecting the cart info, which is going to be this button. And what I'm saying is whenever I click this cart info button, I would want to get the cart. So I'm going to select the cart. And I'm not going to go over right now because there's a bunch of videos on my YouTube channel where you can watch with a JavaScript. So I'm just showing you what happens with right now with CSS and why this is working. So basically what we're doing is we're toggling, we're selecting this cart, and we're using the classless property and the toggle method. And every time we're clicking on a button, we're adding this class of show cart. And once we click it again, then we remove this class of show cart. And the reason why this is working is because basically we set up a width and overflow for the cart by default of 0 and hidden. So it's hidden by default. But then once we click the button with the JavaScript, then instead we add all these properties with the values. So remember previously how everything was working, but then once we removed and replaced with width and overflow, everything was hidden. Now what we're doing is once we click the button, we again add these properties with the values, and then once we click the button again, we remove it. Now it's probably going to be easier to see once I show it in the element. So what we would want to do is we're going to go to inspect and we're going to click on inspect. Now we would want to find where's the cart. So the cart is going to be somewhere in the banner. Now we'll find the cart. Notice this is going to be our cart. Now notice how it has the class of just cart and the ID of the cart. And let's check it out. What happens once I click it? See over here? I have actually a class of show cart. So I added the class that adds the width, the padding, and it rotates. And the moment I'm going to click it again, now I'm going to remove this class. So this is how we're going to do it. And again, if you need more explanation about JavaScript, there's tons of video on my YouTube channel, or you can go to Udemy course, because right now we're just covering the Bootstrap. So I'm not going to go into great detail. But if you have all the class names correctly, everything should be working fine. And this is going to be the end of our project. Once we are done coding the project, now it would be a great time to put our site online and fix the CSS. And what do I mean by fixing the CSS? Well, all this time we have been working with a CSS properties, and we're skipping the actual prefixes. So what I would want is I would want to transform back the CSS that we wrote to a normal CSS and add all the prefixes. Because as you notice, whenever we're working with a CSS, I skip on adding the prefixes because we can do it automatically, so we don't have to do it property by property. So first things first, let's deploy our site. Now for deploying, I'm going to choose Netlify. Now, obviously you can choose whatever provider you would want, but I just find the Netlify the most easiest one. And the only thing you really need to do is just sign up for Netlify. Now I'm not going to go through signing up for Netlify. As you can see, you have either through a GitHub, basically they're going to ask you to allow to share the GitHub, or you can actually do it with an email if you would want. So since I already have signed up, I can just log in over here. So once you sign up, you can do the same thing. And as you're going to log in, you notice that this is going to be your screen. And then it's as easy as it gets. You notice I have here the folder of the project that we just created. And you see that we have two options. We can do the new site from the Git, or I can just drag and drop over here the file that I had. And notice that right away it's telling me that it's basically deploying. And as you can see, your site has been already deployed. Now it comes with this funny looking long custom URL. So obviously this is something that we would want to fix. So if we're going to go over here to a site settings, and if we're going to scroll down, notice that we have an option of change site name. So once I'm going to click on change site name, and let's write that this is going to be grandma's over here. So once I'm going to save it, you'll see that this is going to say the subdomain must be unique. Now let's say grandma's, I don't know, sweets, something like this. Hopefully this is gonna work. And you see the URL, this is gonna be URL. So unless you do some custom URL where you're gonna have to actually attach it, you're basically gonna have the netlify.com. And again, I'm not gonna go through this in this tutorial, but it is very easy. I mean, you just need to sign up for something like Namecheap, get your custom like johnsmilga.com or something like that, and then you just need to assign for whatever you have from the Netlify. But basically, everything is working. So as you notice, once I'm going to click it over here, this is going to be my URL, and our project is online. So like I said, this is as easy as it gets. Basically, drag and drop. Now, obviously, there's another option where we can just do another site. So basically, let's do the same thing. Let's deploy some kind of project, only this time we're going to do it through the GitHub. So I'm going to go back to my main profile, and notice that now again, there's going to be an option new site from Git. So we're just going to click it over here. Then you need to obviously show which provider you already signed up for. So if I sign up for GitHub, obviously I'm going to be using GitHub. Notice here it's going to say that this is authorized, and now I just need to find one of my projects. And again, obviously we're not going to do the same thing because we already used this project to do the drag and drop. So in this case, I'm just going to find some kind of project that I just want to put online. So once I'm going to click it over here, notice that the only thing we need to say is which branch we would want to use. Since in my case, I'm just going to use the master, we can just do the deploy site. And sure enough, now what's happening is the same thing that we had before, where we pretty much just deployed the site. And once it's going to finish deploying, your site is going to be online. And basically you can do the same things of changing, let's say, the custom URL or anything like that. Now, I'm not going to wait around right now till this site deploys, but basically this would be a bread and butter how this thing would work. So let me just close this right now, the Netlify part, and let's check it out what we can do in order to transfer the CSS from our custom properties and create our auto prefixes. Now for this, you're gonna have to have a node. So basically, if you don't have the Node.js, you just need to go to nodejs.org and install, either the 8.12 or 10.12. Depending on what time you're watching this tutorial, obviously these numbers can change. But basically, you need to have a node. So in your terminal, if you're gonna write something like node v, you need to have some kind of numbers over here. Otherwise, if this is going to say that cannot recognize the command or something along those lines, then that means that you don't have a node, and whatever I'm about to show you is not going to work. So I assume that you're going to be able to install the node if you don't have the node. And then next thing after that, you would need to go to my GitHub and just find the gulp CSS. Again, the repository name would be gulp CSS. So here I'm just going to type gulp CSS, and then we're just going to open up this file. Now in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clone it or download it. So I'm just going to say download, and once we're going to download the file, we can just actually close this actual URL. So we can just close the browser. And then I'm going to go to my downloads, and I'm going to find where is my actual CSS. And I'm going to grab my gulp zip, and I'm going to open up the zip file, and I'm going to drag over here the folder that I had before. So next thing, what I'm going to do, or you should be doing if you want to transfer your CSS, what we were doing to a normal one, is open up your text editor. Now I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code, but you can do the same thing with your obviously text editor, and let's say keep on working in a terminal. Because the neat thing that I like about the Visual Studio Code, that it has the integrated terminal. So basically it's the same thing that I would be working in a terminal. However, right away goes to the actual folder that I'm already working on. So basically, if this is working right now globally, what I would want to do is just work within this folder. So this is what's happening right now. So I open up the folder and I open up the integrated terminal, and now I have my terminal in the folder. Again, you can do the same thing where you have a CD, which would be standing for change directory. Then we're going to write over here CD desktop. So now it would be in desktop. Then I'm going to look for the folders that I'm going to have. And notice I have gulp CSS master. So I'll need to do CD. Then we're going to write gulp CSS and master. So basically, these would be the two similar things that we can do. Now in my case, you notice that I'm right away at gulp CSS master. So once we're done with this, you notice that we have a folder. Now within a folder, we have a source where we have just main CSS. Now there's going to be some random CSS over here, and we really don't care about it because we're going to delete it and we're going to place our own CSS over here. Now the difference would be is the fact that here we have packages, and for now we don't have any node modules installed yet. So the first thing what we would need, since we're working with a node, we would need to write npm and install. So once we're going to click that, this is going to get all our development dependencies, basically the ones that I've been using to actually create this. Now I'm using gulp over here for this project, and I'm not going to go over what are the details for actually working with a gulp. And obviously this kind of workflow is very minimal that I have created over here. In a normal case, you would have a much more larger file, and in a normal case you would be doing your development using already your workflow. Now I'm going to skip all this and we're going to do it a little bit backwards, where I have my main CSS, and what we are interested is once we have our packages. So notice in the package.json we have our dev dependencies. So we have auto prefixer, we have gulp, post CSS, and CSS next. So this is what we're going to use to actually transfer the CSS that we have to a normal CSS. Now, once within this main CSS, like I said, we can just delete this and we can get rid of the CSS that we had before. And now let's go back to our grandma suites or whatever folder name you have. Let's find where is our CSS. And once I'm going to open up the CSS, by default, I'm going to open up in the Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to grab everything that is in this style CSS, and I'm going to copy and paste in the source folder, CSS folder, and main CSS. So basically this is where we're transferring all our CSS. So once I'm going to save it, and once it's sitting neatly in a main CSS, what we're going to do is we're just going to write a command of gulp, and then we're going to write CSS. And again, the reason for that is because in my gulp.js file, this is the actual task that I created, and the name over here is CSS. And what this task does, it grabs everything that we have in our source folder main CSS. So everything that we just copy and pasted from our styles, and then it spits out in a distribution folder, CSS, and then it creates the same file with the main CSS. So basically once we're going to write in a terminal gulp CSS, and again, you can do the same thing in a terminal. This is just integrated terminal because it works right with this folder over here. So notice that we have a new folder right now, and we have the main CSS. Now we didn't have that before. Now first we didn't have the node modules, that's why we did npm install, and then the second one we didn't have the distribution folder. So once we have distribution folder, CSS, and sure enough in the main CSS, behold, because we have what? We have normal CSS. So notice how we had our custom properties. So we were able to do the tutorial without me repeating EF799 something. So we were able to do all that, but in the end, we can just get back the normal CSS. So notice once I'm going to go to a main CSS in the distribution, I have all the properties that are set up over here. So I don't need to actually, because the thing with custom properties is that there's obviously browser support. So some browsers might not support this. However, this is just clean CSS. But again, in order for me to go with the tutorial, it's much more easier if I don't have to give you the hex values all the time. And the second neat thing about this is, sure enough, check it out what we have. We have all our auto prefixes. So basically, again, we didn't have to go line by line and add it anywhere where it would be necessary. it basically does it automatically. So again, this is another neat thing from this setup. Now, what we have right now is basically our CSS. So you have two options. You can either copy and paste it and change it in your style CSS. So let me just copy and paste all of this, and let me go back to Grandma Suites, and let me just again open up the CSS. So let's go to style CSS, and again, this is going to open the style CSS. So what I can do is I can just select everything and copy and paste it, and now I'm just going to have a normal CSS over here. So everything should be working fine, and there shouldn't be no issues. Now, if you're not sure whether everything worked correctly, then obviously what you can do is you can just grab whatever you have in your main CSS, go to folder of whatever file name, in my case Grandma Suites, and create another styles, some kind of CSS file, and then change the location, because obviously right now the link path is what. So let's say if I'm going to open up this in the Visual Studio Code, what we're going to have is, notice that we'll have style CSS. So if you're not sure, if you're scared, if you still want to keep your custom properties or something like that, just create another CSS file and change your link from obviously the main CSS to whatever the name that you're going to use. So basically this is what you can do. Now again, like I'm telling you, this is a little bit backwards. What you would want is to set up this workflow, and as you're working, this automatically keeps happening. However, for me to do the tutorial of that is just going to be really painstaking, because I would have to go through every detail and then people get confused, and it's much more easier for me just to deal with a Bootstrap and CSS. And later on, if this is what you want, if you want to transfer the properties, if you want to basically just have a clean CSS, you can either learn how to do it yourself with the gulp, which is very easy, or you can just get my basic, very basic minimal workflow, where you just transfer your CSS back to normal CSS. And obviously you're not limited to just doing this once. If you have some kind of CSS and you want to transfer, the only thing you need to do is just, again, copy and paste it in the main CSS in the source folder. And then it's going to spit it out again. Once you're going to run gulp CSS, it's going to spit it out in the distribution folder. So obviously for this case, we're just doing for this project, but later on, if you just want to keep on using this to get your normal CSS, you can always use this folder. So this would be the end of the project. I hope you guys enjoyed the project, and I hope to see you on the next project.